Good morning. It's great to see all these bright and shining faces early on a Monday, so welcome. I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for February 12th, 2024. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representatives Barrett, Boyd, Camper, Cochran, Crawford, Faison, Freeman, Gant, Garrett, Hawk, Hicks of Hawkins, Hicks of Washington, Kiesling, Lamberth, Love, Lynn, McKenzie, Miller, Moon, Parkinson, Shaw, Sparks, Whitson, Williams, Zachary, Vice Chairman Baum, Chair Lady Hazelwood. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, and sincerely thank you to all the members who made the extra effort, and our presenters as well, obviously, but to our members who have made an extra effort to be here early on a Monday morning. I know that's not the easiest thing to do, and we will try and get through these as quickly but thoroughly as possible and not have any more Mondays like this than we absolutely have to. But with that, I would like to see if there are any personal orders or announcements from anyone. Seeing none, we have 7 budget hearings scheduled this morning, so we're going to be bringing them up and bringing them down. But we are going to start with our Comptroller of the Treasury. We'll ask him to come forward, and without objection, we are out of session. And members, you do have your documents on the dashboard, so all the presentation documents should be loaded. You should be able to see them there as well as on the screen here in the room. So, Mr. Comptroller, welcome to you and your team.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is great to be. Is this the first budget hearing of the entire session for you?
Oh, no, just the first on Monday morning.
Just the first one today. Just the first one today. Well, it's great and an honor to be with you. Thank you very much. Jennifer Pfeiffer, Chief of Staff, is here with me, along with Rachel Caboting, our Director of Management Services. And we're here to present the budget to the Office of the Comptroller. I hope you've heard me say that the mission of the Comptroller's Office is to make government work better. And I'm glad to say, with the budget as presented by the governor, that there are the appropriations necessary for us to fulfill our statutory obligations. One thing that I want to do in beginning is say a big thank you. A thank you on behalf of all 625 Comptroller team members for what you did last year in the salary support that allowed us to get on a level playing field with the executive branch and take a step towards being on a level playing field with the private market that's out there across Tennessee. What you did for our Comptroller team members had an overnight effect on both morale and it cut our turnover rate almost completely to zero. So it's had a tremendous effect, and I appreciate it very much. Now, I certainly recognize and appreciate both having been a member of the General Assembly in good times and bad, and certainly as Comptroller, that we're going to have a more challenging environment this year from a revenue standpoint, and therefore I am not requesting any cost increases for the benefit of the Comptroller's Office. I do, however, want to draw your attention to 2 particular issues that many of you have asked me about that will have a direct impact on our state, both now and in the future. The first one I want to bring to your attention, Madam Chair and members, is the Comptroller's Office responsibility to carry out a weighted caseload study for state trial courts, district attorneys, and public defenders. These studies account for the amount of time and resources needed to process the different types of criminal and civil cases. Cases that take more time and more effort and more resources receive a higher weight, for example. But the weights for these studies are out of date and need to be updated. The weights for the district attorneys, public defenders were last set in 1999, 25 years ago. And the weight for state trial court judges were last set more than a decade ago in 2013. The organization that the state has traditionally contracted with to update the weights recommends the weights be updated at least every 5 to 7 years, and so our weights are out of date. The cost of updating the weights has been estimated to be somewhere around a one-time expense of $500,000. Updating the weights, of course, would allow the Comptroller's Office to provide you, the General Assembly, with current data that can be used in your decision-making, decisions about how to allocate funding for our state's judicial districts. These reports, these weights, of course, are things you can decide or you can see exactly as to whether, for example, a judicial district has the right number of judges or too few or too many. It is my opinion, again, with our office producing a report at your request, that more equal justice across the state would result from updating the weights. It would also, again, allow us to provide you with the latest and greatest current data where you can make decisions about the state's courts. Now, later this week, our office is releasing a report that goes into further detail about this issue, and I will recommend it to you and hope you'll look at it. The new report also addresses how state trial courts were affected by the pandemic, and I know, because you have asked me about it, that that is of great interest to you. Secondly, Madam Chair, I want to talk about a program I know that many of you are interested in, and that is the state's property tax relief program. Now, as I have mentioned in the previous 2 years, the program is underfunded. You are using non-recurring money to pay for a recurring expense. The $41.2 million that is provided for this program no longer covers the total cost of the program for the qualifying elderly, disabled, and disabled veteran homeowners on the program. Back in 2022, we began dipping into the program's reserves to help distribute the relief payments, again, using non-recurring money to meet a recurring expense. If the recurring appropriation is not increased, we will continue to utilize program reserves more and more each year. In fiscal year 2025, which is the budget you're working on right now, and this is something important to remember, for the budget you're working on right now, if no changes are made to the program, and there are bills out there that would expand benefits for the program, but if no changes are made, we expect to pay $50.2 million in tax relief, which is currently $9 million more than what is appropriated. Now, I will mention that not one dime appropriated for tax relief is used to administer the operations of the program within the Comptroller's Office. Every dime appropriated for tax relief is paid to a qualifying recipient. One thing that I will point out is this is the last year that we will have sufficient reserves to fund the program. If no changes are made, when I'm sitting here next year, there will not be sufficient funds for the program unless a change is made. Now, Madam Chair, as I come to a conclusion, let me say, back in 2017, the General Assembly administratively attached an organization called the State Energy Policy Council to the Comptroller's Office. The State Energy Policy Council, which is administratively attached, does have a budget request of, I believe, $400,000 non-recurring. The leadership of the State Energy Policy Council is here today if you would like to hear from them. This is not a request from the Comptroller's Office, but again, a request from an agency that is administratively attached to my office. I appreciate the time and attention you've given me today. Happy to address any questions or talk more about the issues that I've mentioned, the weighted caseload study and the tax relief program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. And I think what we'll do, I have a list of questioners. I think we'll go through those questions that deal with the items you presented and other items in your shop, and then we'll ask the Energy Council folks to come forward and help us understand what the dollars that they're requesting would be used for. So with that, first on my list is Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Comptroller
Thank you.
Mumpower. And I guess maybe now is a good time to build on your comments about the property tax relief program. If someone's eligible for this program and they own multiple properties, would they get the relief on multiple properties or just one?
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna ask our property tax team to come up. We have Ken Morrell and Christy Moore, who work in the Comptroller's Division of Property Assessments and work directly with the Property Tax Relief Program to help me address some of these questions.
Good morning. It's good to be with you today. To answer
Just for the record, if you would state your name and title.
my name is Ken Morrell. I'm Special Projects Manager with the Division of Property Assessments in the Comptroller's Office. And so a recipient is allowed only one residence upon which to receive relief.
Okay. And do you know about how many individuals are benefiting from this?
We paid in the most recent complete year.
Mr. Morrell, if you would, I'm not sure your mic is on. The red light should be on.
Am I coming through now?
Yeah,
I can
there
hear
we
it. I
go.
can hear it now. So, so there were 145,000 claims paid in the most recent complete year for that, for property tax relief, and that represented 105,763 individual persons.
Okay. And some of these recipients are eligible, I guess, based on income thresholds. Do those income thresholds adjust over time for inflation?
Yes, they do. Low-income elderly and low-income disabled recipients are subject to an income limit, but that income limit is adjusted annually by the Social Security cost of living adjustment. Last year it was adjusted quite a lot because it was 8.7%, quite a unique year, but for payments, Social Security payments being made this year in 2024, the factor was 3.2%.
Okay. And then
And
maybe,
if I can expand on that, let me say the veteran side of the program has no income limit.
okay, I think that's what we've heard. We've heard from our veterans that, well, the income limit doesn't affect them, but it does the other groups. Maybe one last question. Could you give us a little bit of a breakdown for how much the three different categories are receiving in benefits, I guess, between the elderly, the disabled, and the veterans?
Certainly. So for tax year 2022, which is the last complete year of data, and that really relates to fiscal 2023, then the elderly received $14,098,000 in relief. The low-income disabled received $1.6 million. Disabled veterans received 24 million, a little over $24 million. And then surviving spouses of disabled veterans under certain circumstances are also eligible for the program in the same way that the disabled veterans are. And so that group received $4.3 million in relief.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that information.
And just a little bit of history on this program. I believe that I recall this program was originally set up for the elderly and disabled. Then we added the veterans to this group. But as the comptroller had mentioned, we added veterans without an income limit, although the elderly and disabled do have an income limit. You mentioned, I think I heard you say 145,000 claimants or claims were filed, but 105,000 claimants were paid out. So can you
Yes.
help me understand the difference there?
Certainly, that's a great question. So each claim, if someone lives in a city, that collects property taxes, then they would file a claim with the city and with the
I
county.
see.
And so that's the reason for claims being different from the number of persons involved. And just a point of clarification, many people do believe that it started out just with elderly, but in actuality, the tax relief program has included the disabled veterans since the first year of the program. But there's always been a difference in the parameters for the disabled veterans. In the first year of the program, the elderly and disabled, for instance, had a property value limit of $5,000, but the disabled veterans had a property value limit of $25,000.
Thank you. And I guess, well, I'll ask my question in a minute. Representative Gant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Comptroller and your team. It's good to see Comptroller Wilson back there as well. I know that during the last storm that we just recently had across the state, dealing with a lot of our municipalities and the utility districts, I know you guys do a lot of manpower hours auditing these public utilities. And I know that depreciation is a large thing that we require a lot of these municipalities to keep in their reserves. And across the state, we saw a lot of systems fail when it comes to water across the state. And I too have requested financial information from some cities inside my district to see where those depreciation dollars are being reinvested. Are they being reinvested into the infrastructure to make it deal with what we just recently saw across the state? And my question is, when y'all audit these water districts, these public utilities, walk me through that process. And Representative Keesling, if you could move to your right, just, there we go, thank you. So that kind of walk me through that process, if you would.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. And I'll ask Ross Colonna, our utilities man in our division of local government finance. Ross, if you'll come down there. Let me say, as Ross comes down, Mr. Chairman, the principle of depreciation is one of the strongest pillars of financial conservatism. And it's good that the law requires depreciation to be paid. Depreciation, of course, is setting aside money for the replacement of an asset when that asset reaches the end of its useful life, or when that asset fails. And so it's something that we talk about. If we don't talk about it every day, we talk about it at least every week with utilities across the state. In talking more about the audit process of utilities, we have folks here from our Division of Local Government Audit. The Comptroller's Office supervises the audit of every utility every year. Ross helps lead the staff of the Tennessee Board of Utility Regulation. And Ross, I'll let you expand on that, please.
Sure. So good morning. My name is Ross Colonna. I'm Assistant Director of Local Government Finance in the Comptroller's Office. So as far as your question is concerned regarding the audit process, that's not something that I'm completely familiar with. And I think that it would be better answered by someone from local government audit. But as far as your question is concerned regarding the depreciation fund, so there is no requirement that the funds that are set aside for depreciation, that those are restricted for the replacement of any such infrastructure in which the funds are being set aside for. So our office really isn't checking to make sure that those funds are being reinvested into the infrastructure. That's the expectation, but there is no state requirement that is what occurs there.
Okay, thank you for the answer. So who in state would give oversight to those utility districts with that respect?
Can you clarify your question, sir? I'm sorry.
Well, we saw many water systems fail. And as a requirement, we require the depreciation to be put aside to be invested, as Comptroller just said, back into the infrastructure of that utility district, so that those systems are constantly at the best that they possibly can be over time. Well, we saw that as a massive failure here in this recent storm. And I got many calls from people all across West Tennessee with systems that were failing, from Mason to Selmer, all over West Tennessee. And we've got to fix this problem. If we're going to require them to take all these depreciation dollars and set it aside, I want to know where it's going and how it's being reinvested into the infrastructure of those utility districts.
Sure.
And I don't know if that answer is to you or whoever, but there's got to be some oversight brought to that situation.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't understand at first, but now I do. So that would be our office, and with the board that we staff, the Tennessee Board of Utility Regulation. So one of the things that our board does is we are in charge of regulating water loss in Tennessee, and that has been changed in recent years because the way that water loss was previously being regulated, we didn't really find it to be that effective because we were seeing issues across the state, and so now. Our board, as I said, we changed the way that we are regulating the water loss, and we have seen improvements, but unfortunately, I don't really have data on how much it's improved because we only changed it in the last 2 years. So that is our board that would be overseeing that to make sure that the utilities aren't losing a certain threshold of water. And, another portion of why some utilities may not necessarily be using the depreciation funds to replace their infrastructure is because they are able to get, grants or loans for that. However, as far as the episode that we saw during the cold snap recently, that was an issue that occurred statewide, and that really isn't something that we're able to address, overnight. However, we've as many calls as everyone, all the legislators got, we were getting those too. And we have a board meeting in March where we anticipate bringing a lot of those issues up because we are able to order these utilities to figure out how to fix their infrastructure to prevent this from happening in the future.
And Madam Chair, if I can expand on that, I will tell you what the recent storm pointed out more than anything is the need for more consolidation and regionalization of utilities. We have several, particularly in our rural county or our counties with just several utility districts or small water districts. We really need regionalization of those so that they can become stronger, more efficient, and more effective in serving their ratepayers.
Totally agree. And thank you for your answer, and very much agree with that assessment. Thank you. And Madam Chair, would you like me to continue? Okay. Another line of questioning that I've got here is the department was allocated $9.9 million for salary market rate adjustments in FY 23-24 budget, and $670,000 in the FY 22-23 budget. Have you implemented market adjustments from FY 23-24 allocation? What was your methodology for determining the adjustment each employee received?
Thank you very much. And Madam Chair and Representative Gant, that is what I started this presentation off by saying such a big thank you for. What a tremendous difference it has made in our office in terms of both morale and ending our turnover rate. It allowed us to become on a level playing field with the executive branch. It allowed us to become more in line with what the private market pays. It allowed us to retain so many financial professionals. I'm going to ask Rachel Caboting to expand on the exact methodology used. But again, I want to say thank you for what you did for our employees.
Hi, Rachel Caboting. I'm Director of Management Services, and thank you for the question. Our staff really appreciates what has been done for them this past year. We worked with the same company that the executive branch worked with EY, and they were able to give us competitive benchmarks for each position that we have in our office. And somewhere within that competitive benchmark is where we slated everybody in our office depending on their skills, their abilities, their years of experience. So we went ahead and put everybody where we thought the competitive market was at, according to the EY study. And we also do our own studies on that. So we don't just rely on one group. We're doing our internal studies also. So we put everybody in the beginning where we thought they were going to be on the benchmark, and then we spread them competitively through that competitive benchmark.
Thank
Okay.
you, Leader Cochran.
Thank you, Chair Lady, and thank you for, appreciate the Comptroller's Office being with us this morning. So the Comptroller's Office, you staff the Tennessee State School Bond Authority. So that issues revenue bonds and notes to finance capital projects for higher educational institutions. And so that's both our 4-year and our 2-year. When you're evaluating a loan request, so does the TSSBA consider cumulative outstanding debt the institution currently has? And just kind of tell us about that process. What do you look at when they are requesting a particular amount? What does that approval process look like?
Thank you very much. And as I begin to answer that, I'm going to ask Sandy Thompson. Sandy, if you'll trade places with Ross there. Sandy's our Director of State Government Finance and leads the staff for the Tennessee State School Bond Authority. Of course, myself, Secretary Hargett, Treasurer Lillard, and Commissioner Bryson sit on the School Bond Authority, although I suppose Governor Lee has a seat. Does he have a seat on that board as well?
Yes, he does.
But it is important to point out that debt issued by the Tennessee State School Bond Authority has a revenue pledge, meaning it's demonstrated that they have a revenue stream to pay that debt service. But Sandy, will you expand on the question Representative Cochran has specifically?
Sure. Sandy Thompson, Director of State Government Finance. And so your question was basically, how do we determine, what the accumulated debt is outstanding for each school? And so, the School Bond Authority bond program is a pooled loan program. And there's a gross revenue pledge of all revenues from all of the schools. And that's what's really great about that program, is that all of those schools can tap into that same credit and become a part of that pool by borrowing that money, as long as they agree to pledge revenues and have sufficient revenues from that project that they are going to build to cover the debt service on that project. Does that help?
I believe that answers that. And if I may, one follow-up. So procedurally, if a state higher ed institution defaults on a loan, who is liable?
So there's like belt and suspenders on the program. So the belt is actually the gross revenues of the whole program. And so we would draw upon the revenues of, other institutions as a whole. And then the suspenders is the state appropriations. That's the state aid intercept. So we would actually intercept their state aid, the intercept amount for that school, to cover that debt service.
Thank you.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Comptroller, appreciate you coming today. You mentioned something that I didn't think we'd have much of discussion about, but wanted to ask, as you relook at the case study of doing the about the number of cases the judiciary is seeing, is there a metrics that we look at that evaluate judges based upon that case study? Do we look and see the number of cases? I had a question from someone from my district, and as it relates to their overall performance, it could be that we look at the number of cases that we have and whether we need another judge or not. But if there's no real, I guess, determiner of whether a judge is actually seeing the same number of cases in any courtroom that they would see either in their own judicial district or in another one. Do we have a way of measuring that as it relates to the caseload and where we should make future investments in adding judges?
So thank you for the question. I'll ask Russell Moore from our Office of Research and Education Accountability that oversees the Judicial Weighted Caseload Project to come down. But one thing I would say is that when we use a contractor to go into judicial district by judicial district and evaluate the cases that are being heard, they work to make sure that a filing is counted the same district to district, that a case is counted the same from district to district. And then I'll let Russell, you expand on that a little bit more.
Sure thing.
And we also have Aaron Brown and David Melendez who are working on the weighted caseload report that you're going to receive later this week.
Yes, thank you. Russell Moore, Director of the Office of Research and Education Accountability in the Comptroller's Office. We're not aware of any sort of evaluation of the judges. But I will say that the work we do is really just work based on the number of cases in which cases take more time or less time. So there may be some aspect of this that's not part of our responsibility. So the AOC or the Administrative Office of the Courts or the Judicial Branch may be able to help with that question, but we're not aware of anything.
And let me expand on that because I may have misunderstood. We are absolutely not involved in evaluating the effectiveness of the judge or whether or not they are a slow moving one or a fast moving one or anything like that. We are not evaluating the performance of the judges.
Thank you. My comment there is that we're doing these studies in order to determine where we're going to put future judges or where the need might be. But if there's somewhere across the state there's an underperforming judge and the reallocation of those resources to another judicial district might be necessary, because it's always looking as if we're studying based upon some kind of addition, not subtraction or relocation. So I think it'd be important for us to take a look at that in years going forward, because performance is really a part of that. And of course, the only place that's going to occur is when you have a problem in the Office of Judicial Conduct. And so hopefully we'll be able to evaluate those. But I knew since you were responsible for the study, I didn't know if there were any matrix.
And thank you again. And Mr. Chairman, let me remind, as far as the work that is done, that is out there counting the filings and counting the cases and making that's done by a private contractor. So that is not actually done by the Comptroller's Office.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just kind of follow up on my colleagues from West Tennessee's comment on the pay raises. One, thank you all for having the foresight to do that and kind of stop the flow of employees in one direction. But I'll make a comment and then a question, and that is I would hope that the next time, and there should be a next time. I know this is not the year for it as far as our collections and where we are, but I would hope that from now on or going forward that we not get ourselves in this what I would call predicament, not just for your organization, but really statewide, as we look at our salaries, that we remain competitive because, you all are now growing young employees up and they're gaining that knowledge. And I would hate for, 5 to 7 years from now for this to be more of a cyclic kind of event. So my question is, what are you all doing going forward to maintain this competitive salary edge and statewide?
Well, thank you for that question, and I will start and then let Rachel or Jennifer expand on it. But I will tell you that from day one, when people start working for the Comptroller's Office, we have a career mindset in our mind for them. We want to create the kind of environment, we want to create the kind of workplace, we want to offer the kind of challenging work that people are interested in doing. When employees wake up, I tell them all the time, I want them to wake up excited about the challenge they're going to come and face, so that they have a great experience working for the Comptroller of the Treasury. Mr. Chairman, or members behind me are sitting several directors in the Comptroller's Office. You have people behind me who have been here for 20, for 30, for more than 40 years. They have made a career of making government work better in the Office of the Comptroller of the Treasury. We are very concerned about salary, of course, particularly in this dynamic, fast-growing Middle Tennessee market. The demand for financial professionals is extreme. Over in Knoxville, one of the fastest growing cities in the state, the comptroller has 2 offices, one right off of Kingston Pike and one on the University of Tennessee campus. That's another place where salary is important. We try to match that with a work-life balance. We care about our employees. Our HR team takes great measures to make sure that our employees are cared about, not only when they're at work, but when they're at home. We have many activities that we offer employees across the state, not only in the Nashville office, but we have 8 offices across the state. Greenville, 2 in Knoxville, Cookeville, Murfreesboro, Nashville, Jackson, and Memphis. And so we take measures across the state to make sure that our employees are cared for, not only through salary, but through a great work-life balance. Rachel, would you like to expand on that? Or Jennifer, would you like to expand on that?
Hi, Jennifer Pfeiffer, Chief of Staff with the Comptroller's Office. I guess what I would say is, as Rachel mentioned earlier, we were already sort of trying to take a look at this on our own and using software to help us understand where our employees were and competitive to the market in Nashville. And so we were already doing that. And then we were able to, with the executive branch taking on the same project, work with, EY, as Rachel mentioned. And so I feel last year we got to a really good point, feeling really good about being competitive with the executive branch and with the market, but we're not going to stop. We're going to continue to do our work. It wasn't just sort of a one and done. It really can't be. So I would say we're going to continue our work, continue just to look at the market, using the software we have to continue to make sure that we're competitive and adjust as necessary. I would just say this was probably a large adjustment at one time just to really get us caught up, but to me, the work will continue. So.
I agree. Rachel Cabading, Director of Management Services. I agree with what's being said. In my office, we are looking at this, I would say monthly, to make sure that we we stay competitive with not only the market that's out there, but with the state government as a whole. We want to make sure that we're not losing our employees to other executive branch agencies and everything. For example, we met with Commissioner Williams, Comptroller and I did, and just asked to be remembered when they do these types of studies going in the future. I think Commissioner Williams mentioned he would like to do this study every 3 or 4 years just to make sure we're staying competitive. He's also looking at getting a software similar to what we are already using. So we feel pretty good about the software that we're using, but we want to make sure that we're looking at this at all times. For instance, we are looking at this month because the executive branch implemented some additional increases for skills and experience that went into effect in January. So we want to make sure that our staff, we think we have already implemented a lot of those things, but we want to make sure that we stay equivalent to where the executive branch is. So we're not seeing that bleeding across the state government as we were. And just to give you a little bit of examples, before we implemented the salary studies, last fiscal year, we had an overall a turnover rate of 11 or 12%, but about 19% of that, it was higher in our audit category, which really affected the ability of the audits that we had to do. Since the 6 months since we've implemented the salary study, we have dropped our turnover rate to 2 to 3% in a lot of our categories, which is a incredible amount. And a lot of those percentages are due to retirements. And so that's what we're seeing now is we're having quite a bit more people than we expected actually retire. So that's affecting our turnover rate. So we're not seeing as many go to other jobs. So we feel good about the salaries that we're at the moment.
And
I appreciate the depth of the answers, but we are so way over time and we do have a number of other questioners on the list. So I'm going to ask both the questioners and the responders to be as brief as possible while answering the question. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Comptroller. I really appreciate the study you all did on salaries. My question is around whether there has been such a study for county funded and state funded public defenders and assistant district attorneys. What we find in Shelby County is that we could have a state funded ADA that is 5-year making about, $70,000. And then you have a county funded ADA right next to them, 15 years making 55. And then so there's this imbalance in a state and county funded ADA position. The same is happening in the public defender's office. And it's creating a lot of, morale issues there. And a lot of the people on the county funded side is, leaving, like we were seeing in the market analysis, the county going to the state. And it's causing a lot of problems for our particular district. Has there ever been any study to look at that?
I'll ask Russell to expand on that.
Russell Moore, Director, OREA in the Comptroller's Office. That's not been part of our scope with our statutory responsibility. I'm not aware of a study that we have done. If there was one, it would be very out of date by this point, I think.
Leader Camper, follow up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. In the essence of time, I'll ask you my other questions later. Thank you.
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I will be brief. One, thank you for the weighted caseload study that y'all been a part of before. I know I've asked you to look at my county, and I know you've looked at other counties as well. It's probably time we do that statewide again, but I know until we do that, you're just kind of trying to do it piecemeal. But thank y'all for doing that. On the depreciation issue that was asked earlier, my question is really this. I mean, for small communities, let's say cities under 5,000, I understand that depreciation is such a critical part of making sure that we stay solid as a system. But when you're a small community and you get a grant for, say, $5 million for a water treatment facility, what really happens on the ground is that, for older folks on fixed incomes, their water rates triple, sometimes worse than that. And yet, from what I heard earlier from the testimony, those funds are not required to be for a replacement facility. So for smaller communities, one, how do we deal with that issue? And two, why is it not required that be for a new facility? And really a third part of that question, since I'm going to be brief here, is who dictates and how on what that depreciating amount is going to be? I mean, if it's a $5 million facility, who determines the life of that facility? How much it would be to replace it? I mean, these are the issues that we're facing in many of our small communities that quite frankly are just hidden tax increases on a lot of small, cities and rural parts of the counties that are just never going to be able to truly be able to afford it. But those are my questions on that.
So thank you very much. And there's a lot of different ways that I would answer that question. Again, believing as I do that depreciation is one of the most fundamental pillar tenets of fiscal conservatism, I definitely understand because I talk to these communities, if not every day, at least every week, about the depreciation issue. The principle, many of us who have children or grandchildren say that, I want to do what I can today so that my children and grandchildren don't have to pay for the problems once I'm gone. To not fund depreciation would be like saying, well, I'm going to get this asset today and my kids and grandkids will pay for it once it fails. So we're big believers in depreciation. Depreciation is a tenet of what's called GAAP, the general accepted accounting principles that are in the law. And I can bring Ross back up just a minute to give you the exact way the percentages are determined. But I will tell you honestly, rarely do we find that depreciation is the problem. More often, what we find is that the general management of the utility is the problem. And oftentimes in these small rural communities you're talking about, the answer would probably be consolidation and regionalization of utilities where there didn't have to be so many assets acquired. Ross, can you expand on how the percentage of depreciation is determined?
Yeah, statutorily, the Tennessee Board of Utility Regulation has the responsibility to set the useful lives of these assets, and those were set, years ago before I started the Comptroller's Office. And those are based on engineering standards. So water treatment plant, usually 40 to 50 years, somewhere in there. And then you just take the value of that asset and divide it by, the 40 to 50. And that's what it is annually. And on the note of, the rates and everything, the one thing that I would like to add is, generally speaking, in my experience with dealing with the 450 utilities that are under us, I see utilities that don't change their rates for years. So inflation is occurring, everything is changing, but 5, 6, 7 years, the rates don't change. And then they do have to, go up 20, 30, 40%. Whereas what we recommend and oftentimes what we order, utilities adopt a 2, 3, maybe 4% rate increase annually. And these communities don't really see that struggle because they're seeing that incremental increase, with inflation rather than being hit with that one-time big change.
Which is
Leader Lambert.
exactly what I meant when I said it's rarely the depreciation issue, it's the management issue.
Leader Lambert.
Madam Chair, now we can continue this outside of the committee, but it is going to be a conversation I think that we should have for small communities, because I understand everything else said, but in a 3,000 person town, what you just said is rates will go up forever no matter what, and no matter who pays for the actual water treatment facility. And in most of these instances that I'm talking about, they got a federal or state grant to pay for it this time, and they're going to get one 20, 30, 40 years from now. It's probably not going to be a town of 3,000 that can afford that. Now, and I understand the regionalization and everything else, but these towns are pretty proud of being able to be a town that stands on their own 2 feet, and we help them. But statutorily, and look, this is for us to determine, but statutorily, that's what we've required right now. And so for larger towns, Comptroller, I agree with you 100%. It is critical that we require that depreciation. But when you get down below a certain size, it just doesn't seem to work well, and we all know it. And so it's just a conversation I think we should have over the next few months. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate your patience with us.
And let me say that through the Tennessee Board of Utility Regulation, we have and are attempting to work on a utility by utility basis with people facing issues like this. And we are, under the law, as we can, taking steps to help them.
Right, we have 2 other questions on the list, and I would like to circle back with the comptroller and just ask, not for now, but I would like to have some more information on the income issue, the property tax relief, what the numbers look like in terms of growth and projections, what we would need to think about starting to set aside to make that fund whole. As you
Sure.
tell me, our reserves are being depleted as of this budget year. Representative Freeman and Representative Sparks, if you would please just be quick, and the comptrollers and your staff, if you would be as brief in your response as possible. We are way past time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's part of the question I was going to ask, is you made the comment that to fully fund it would be $50 million for the tax relief. But I guess the question I have is, it's a tax relief for seniors and disabled Tennesseans for only $38,000. And that doesn't seem to, there doesn't seem to be equity there, because the median home price in Davidson County is significantly more than the median home price in some other counties. And so that dollar goes a lot more outside of Nashville. Has there ever been a study to analyze that? And do we know how far back? When did that 38,000 and the 175 for veterans, when was that set?
I'm going to bring Ken Morrell back down. There definitely is not equity. You said there was an inequity. That definitely is true.
Right.
And the legislature has adjusted the value caps and the income caps within the last few years. But let me say another thing. While I have said that the program is not sufficiently funded this year, I mean, we project that it's going to grow incrementally, whereas it's $50 million this year. In the next few years, if it meets projections, it will approach $100 million recurring. Ken?
Ken Morrell, Projects Manager with the Division of Property Assessments in the Comptroller's Office. In the past, the value limit, which determines how much the amount is of property tax relief that's calculated, the value limit for elderly, low-income elderly and disabled persons was just set periodically in statute. And so legislation would be introduced really every year, but passed from time to time to adjust that amount. In the 2018 legislative session, I believe it was, perhaps 2017, then it was set at $27,000, but it was also then to be adjusted for inflation thereafter by the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers. And so the CPIU is now used to provide an inflation adjustment to the value limit for low-income elderly and low-income disabled homeowners, and it's that one is capped at 3%. The value limit of $175,000 for disabled veterans actually came about in 2006. In 2015 and 16, due to some budgetary issues, it was set at $100,000, but then it was restored in 2017 to $175,000.
Great, thank you. I just want to flag for the other members on this committee that those amounts are very low for median home prices in my community, and I would think in some of yours. And I would just encourage us to look at those limits to make sure it's giving the help to Tennesseans that we want it to. So thank you.
And I would second that and say also, I think there's a great disparity. We honor our veterans. We appreciate our veterans. We certainly want to take care of them. But at the same time, we have a lot of elderly people who don't have any of the assets that our veterans do that are $38,000. I don't care even if you're in a rural county. That's not very much property tax relief for people who are living on a very small Social Security check.
And let me say, the low-income elderly and disabled, let me speak up for them as well. They have a value cap and an income cap, which are both lower than they should be. That is a population I would like to speak up for as well.
So again, I think that having the information on what we're looking at in terms of funding, and then, we may need to make some hard choices about how we allocate that fund going forward. President Sparks.
Real quick, just the need for that weighted caseload study. I was with a group of the day, Moms Over Murder. They've all suffered losses from gang violence and their sons being killed, and they're waiting on justice. And the detective was there, and one of them was 5 years. So he said the lack of medical examiners, and I see where Shelby County is going to stop helping surrounding counties. So I just wanted to share that for the record. Thank you, Chairman.
There is no doubt for anyone like you, Representative Sparks, who lives in the 13th fastest growing county in the United States, needs more relevant caseload data.
All right. Thank you, Comptroller, and your extended team for
Thank you
answering our
all.
questions today. We may be getting back with you, particularly on this property tax relief issue, for additional discussion. We were going to ask that our esteemed Secretary of State
Thank you.
come
Thank you.
forward. Mr. Secretary, welcome, and I apologize for having you wait, and I know you were even here early, so you have an extended wait, but we'll just ask you to get right into your presentation, and I know that there are a number of things that you want to discuss with us, and I'm sure that we will have questions for you, so.
On up. There we go. Okay, thank you. I'm coachable. Well, most of the time anyway. So to my right is Mark Goins, who is our coordinator of elections. To my left is our chief operating officer, Rose Case. And to her left is Jamie Ritter, who is our state library and archivist and making his debut in this committee, I believe. Is this your second time? Just barely. Okay. All right. So I had extended prepared remarks, but I'm going to be brief. I think the most important thing I could tell you is we are not asking for any new positions, and we're not asking for any more money. There is an increase that would show up under our category in the budget that pertains to the Bureau of Ethics Campaign Finance and the Registry of Election Finance, where they, I think, are seeking about $193,000 for a new software system. I think theirs is antiquated, and I think they've made a request and the governor has put that in the budget. So that's the only thing we're asking for. If I can, though, instead of what I was going to talk about, and I don't want to diminish the important work that our department does, is several questions came out of the previous presentation by the comptroller about compensation. And so I just quickly want to say thank you for the money that has been appropriated to our department to help us keep our employees. The market money has been helpful. We still have a little bit left to do, frankly. I think we have an issue right now when we look at our administrative law judges that we need to be compensating them more. When I look at what entry-level lawyers coming into state government are getting paid, contrasting that with what some of our ALJs are making, we've got some adjustments we still need to make there. But if you had come to me and said that you want to appropriate more market money to us in this year's budget, I would have told you don't do that. I feel like that we have found our sweet spot. We used the EY study, did our own analysis as well, and feel like we have been able to get to a place where the people in our department are fairly compensated. And when they're not, frankly, they'll vote with their feet. You know, especially in an environment now where a lot of people are getting work from home. And by the way, our people, they work from home for a little while, but we came back pretty quickly in 2020 because we realized there's a value in being here. A lot of the work that we do requires us to be here. The ability to collaborate and not say, hey, I'm going to wait till Thursday when I'm in the office to talk to you about it. Our leadership understands the value in being in our offices. And so if people don't want to be here, they'll find other opportunities. But when we lose people, it's not over money. We lose people because, frankly, throughout our organization, people stay. And when people stay, sometimes there's not an opportunity for people to move up. But we don't view that as a threat. You know, when we interview people, I tell them that we are for you personally and professionally, that we hope you have a great career progression here, but we want to help you build a track record of accomplishment that you can take to your next employer. We hope that's here, elsewhere in state government, but whatever that is, we want them to have opportunities wherever they go. And we have found when we approach it like that, then people want to stay. But we want people to have opportunities, whether it's with us or outside of our department. So that's the kind of culture we have built. I'm glad to take questions. Like I said, I could go on and on about being ranked #1 in election integrity. The fantastic role that our state library and archives plays not only in downtown Nashville, but in preserving and making accessible the rich heritage that we have in our great state. The fact that our administrative law judges are over 90%, 99% of their cases orders are being issued on time and many an average of 13 days early. I could go on and on and on, but I know you wanted me to be brief. I heard your challenge to your members to be brief, and I'll just go take questions and I'll try and weave in some more things as we go along.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I always appreciate the fact that you you read the room well. So thank you so much. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Mr. Secretary. Thank you. Obviously, you run a very lean ship. I know that you take great pride in keeping your department very small and efficient, and so were your comments. So we all appreciate that, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Madam
Hawkins.
Chair. And Mr. Secretary, it's certainly good to see you. You were all over the question that I was going to ask, and so just a couple more questions about this market salary adjustment, the 5.2 million. First of all, how much of that is left over? Then, kind of, what was your methodology for spreading that out? And then my third question will be, did any of that go to the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance? And I'll hang up and listen to your
All
response.
right, thank you. So I don't have the exact number on what is left. There's still some to be spent. As I mentioned earlier, we've still got to make some more adjustments with our administrative law judges. We've kind of learned from the past couple of budget cycles too, that we don't want to jump out too quickly in case the executive branch decides to do something later in the game and then we're playing catch up again. So that's part of it. I don't believe that any of our dollars went to the Bureau of Ethics and Campaign Finance, but Macy, do you have a number for me? Okay, she's going to dig that out, and if it's okay, I'll email it to you, Madam Chair, and you can distribute it to the members of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, lady, and good morning. May be appropriate that you have your archivist here for the first meeting of his first meeting. In fiscal year 22-23, the budget appropriated 553,700, of which 220,900 was non-reoccurring for digital preservation of electronic records, including 4 additional positions. 1, have they been filled? And 2, has the digitalization of the records been completed? If not, how much remains to be done? Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Now, Representative, I could answer that question, but just so he gets his feet wet, I'm going to give that over to Mr. Ritter.
Thank you, sir. My name's Jamie Ritter, State Librarian and Archivist. So to answer your question, yes, the 4 positions have been filled. The digitization effort will be ongoing as we continue to bring records in, but the most important piece of that was about 20,000 hours of legislative audio that we're having converted to digital. That's about 25% done. It's a real-time conversion process, so we can't run a tape through at high speed and convert that over. So 20,000 hours worth of work to get those done, but it's ongoing.
And I'm so glad that that is an electronic process and we don't have someone who is subjected to listening to 20,000 hours of legislative comment. That might be cruel and inhuman punishment. Chairman Kiesling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Hargett, thank you for the great job you're doing as well as your staff. Most of all, thank you for your friendship to all of us.
Likewise.
The subject here is the real property transaction reporting system. Now, in this year's budget, we appropriated $80K, which was non-reoccurring, for this system. So how does this register the real estate transactions by certain non-resident aliens and sanctioned foreign businesses statewide? Is that a, okay?
Is that the
That's it,
question,
period,
Representative?
for the moment. Yeah.
Thank you,
I
Chairman
have 4
Keesling.
to follow up quickly.
Yeah, so Chairman Keesling, I will tell you that the law as passed has some questions we still have unresolved, so it has not been implemented. We have not spent the money, and my understanding is there may be a couple piece of legislation that are going to be before the legislature this year that may clarify those questions and really get straight to the intent of what the legislature had intended. So
Got it.
we've not spent those dollars. If something happens where you change course and do it differently, then certainly those dollars will go back to the general fund or whatever department you want them appropriated to. Does that help?
It does. And matter of fact, you took away my next question. Let's dovetail off of that though. How are we going to market that in short form? Have you've got something out there, right?
Well, we don't have anything out there right now because there's still some ambiguity out there exactly about what we've been marketing. I think there's a lot of clarification that needs to occur. We know that because we have people from a handful of people across the state who are emailing us or calling us and asking us those questions. So, right now we can't market something that we can't be confident in is accurate and really what the intent of the legislature is. If and when you clarify that, and if and when it does remain with us, we would certainly do it like we do everything else we do. That'll be the Safe at Home program or the business trafficking program we're rolling out later this month, different things like that. We'll certainly use every channel we have available to make Tennesseans aware of that opportunity to take advantage of that program.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just to follow up, I think what I'm hearing you say, the biggest obstacle to this right now is just the clarity and for your office to determine exactly what it is the legislature would like you to do. If that is clarified during this legislative session, what is kind of the implementation timeline that you would expect to get something like this on the books and up and running?
I probably have somebody sitting back in their office right now that's going to faint when I say this, but I think it's not a hard process. I think we can have something up and running probably within 2 or 3 months. Now, how widespread people would take advantage of that, I don't know. But at the same time, I think we could have something up and running 2 or 3 months. I do know there's a bill out there, frankly, that might move those responsibilities to Department of Agriculture. They probably fainted when I said that. But, that may be the more appropriate place for it, but ultimately we'll leave that up to this body.
And then there's the enforcement piece too, that would have to at some point be addressed.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
A number of questions. Representative Gant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate you coming down to the district. I know you've been traveling across the state talking about our election integrity, and you did a super job of explaining what we're doing here in Tennessee. And just for the people that are watching, if you could just give us a quick summary of the election integrity and how you've been involved in that real quickly.
Well, I think, frankly, this body deserves the credit for that. You've given us laws. We choose to follow them, unlike some other states. So I think that's one of the things that makes a big difference in why Tennessee has achieved such bipartisan success in running quality elections that meet the highest test of integrity. But there are several things. You've given us a photo ID law. We have a strong law when it comes to absentee ballots. We don't allow ballot harvesting. We don't allow ballot drop boxes. We watermark absentee ballots. We don't allow outside funding of election administration, what some people refer to as Zuckerbucks. There's a lot of things like that that you have backed us up on and given us laws in place to make it clear the things that we're doing, that we want to make Tennessee truly a state where it's easy to vote, but hard to cheat. And also along those lines, when I say easy to vote, it's never been easier to register to vote than it is right now in the state of Tennessee. It's never been easier to vote. We've got 2 weeks of early voting as well as election day. And we're out working around this state to do college voter registration drives, the Ann Dallas Dudley Award, where we're going to have a record 54 schools that have achieved over 85% voter registration, 30 of which have hit 100% voter registration of eligible 18-year-olds. So we want people to go register, and then we want them to go and vote. But we also need them to be able to trust in the results of the election. So they all go hand in hand.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Madam Chair.
And I'd just like to add my thanks to that. I know, and I'm sure I'm not the only one on this panel or in the legislature, but the Secretary has taken time to talk with constituents of mine who've had specific concerns, detailed concerns. He is being more than open to having one-on-one conversations with those people, and I certainly do appreciate that and appreciate all the work that's been done by your staff. As you say, in Tennessee, I feel comfortable in telling my constituents it is easy to vote and it's very hard to cheat, which is the way it should be for every voter in the country. Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I think you just answered my question. I was sitting here thinking my colleague, Chairman Gant, and I must think much alike, because I was about to ask you the same question about election integrity. And I appreciate all the work you've done in coming to the district and explaining that to our constituents. And I really feel good about Tennessee, and I just want to thank you for the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. I know that wasn't a question, but I've quoted you before, because I think it was either this committee last year or the year before, is one of the things that you said, and you gave guidance to your colleagues as well, is what we're doing here is working. And we don't always have to be going out and trying to change something every year when what we are doing is working. It doesn't mean that we ought not be intentional and aware of every threat out there, but recognizing that we're doing a lot of the right things, and just because other states aren't doing it the way we think it ought to be done doesn't mean we have to go do something different. Thank you.
Representative Freeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you, Secretary, we've talked about this quite a bit. And while I fully appreciate the integrity of our voting system and us being able to tout that we're one of the top, we're still one of the lowest in voter turnout. And when you've got less than 50% of the population in some elections voting, we've historically been in the bottom 5. Are the states in the top 5, do they not have high integrity election results, or are they just, is it easier to vote? And then I challenge you to come up with a goal to, let's move up 10 spots. Let's try to get 55% of our population Tennesseans voting 60%. Do you have an internal goal on where we want to be?
Oh,
'Cause-
my goal is to be number one in voter integrity, number one in voter turnout. I mean, I would love to see every citizen who is eligible to vote to go and cast their vote, because I think that gives you better information when you come here and you know what the wishes of the voters are. That's why we do the things that we do when it comes to trying to register high school seniors, and why we do the things we do on college campuses. And, frankly, we do everything but children's birthday parties and getting out there and trying to get people to participate in the elections. The bottom line is, I can help make it easier, and I can help with voter integrity. People go vote for a couple of different reasons. They go because someone in their sphere of influence encourages them to go and vote. Okay? That can be a family member, it can be a friend, it could be a coworker. That's why we have the Your Vote Matters program, where we've worked with Fortune 500 companies and nonprofit organizations, chambers of commerce, what have you, around the state to get them to use their spheres of influence in getting them to go and vote. Because I know it's hard to believe. You and I are both very charming and witty people. If you don't believe it, just ask us. And it took y'all a second, but a couple of y'all laughed anyway, is people don't go and vote because the Secretary of State says they should. Just like they didn't go watch the Super Bowl last night because the referees were on the field. They go because they want to watch the teams play. And they tend to watch whenever they are interested in a particular player, they're interested in a team. And also, sometimes they go and vote because they're in favor of something, or they go because they're really not in favor of somebody. And people do go vote for candidates, and they go vote against candidates and ideas. And frankly, I think the more that candidates and parties will do to encourage people to get out and vote, and not just the people who voted in 4 out of the last 4 primaries, but get people who are get them registered to vote and get them to go and vote, that's what's going to drive turnout. They don't go because of us. They go because there's something that they're passionate about and go to the polls.
Representative Freeman, you have a follow-up?
I do. And while I appreciate you saying it's our fault that we don't get enough people to turn out vote, I'm kidding with you. Sorry.
Thank you.
I would really like to see your office come up with a goal and help. If you don't have a goal, you don't know that you're working towards something, and you don't know what to track. And I'd really like to see you come up with a goal of, let's get out of the bottom, 5, lowest voting turnout states. Let's move up the ranks. And I too believe the more people that vote, the better representation we're going to have up here. We're going to have a real reflective representative body of what the voters of Tennessee want to see, as opposed to, there are people that are sitting up here with us right now that get 12,000 votes, and they represent 70,000 people. And we need to have, people getting at least half, I would hope, to have a real reflective body that represents the wants and views and wishes of Tennesseans. So
I've heard your message, and I'm not going to disagree with you, because we both want people to go and vote, because we think that makes our form of government stronger when they do. If every registered voter, and even I'll drill down a little bit more, if every person who goes to vote would just get one more person to go with them, we would go from the bottom quarter of voter registration, voter participation, to being number 1 in the country. That's how simple it is.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague from Davis County. That really is, I would think, is a huge key in being, as we are, a representative form of government. But I like to ask my question toward the archivist, and it's a question and maybe / suggestion. You all do great work in terms of what you all are doing to preserve the history. I have a museum in my district that does that, tries to preserve the history. My comment / question is, a lot of times these smaller museums that we've given funds. In fact, this last year we've created a pot of money to give them funds. They would like to do some of that, but they just don't have the expertise that a state type organization has. One, do you all offer services to those smaller entities, or if not, would you consider maybe having webinars or opportunities for them to come here to kind of see the projects, even if it's aspirational, and investment that they can get the same equipment and take the same process. So is that something that you all do or consider doing, would consider doing?
Yeah, thank you for the question and comment. We do have considerable outreach into the community. I mean, we work with archives, county archives, as well as librarians, and we do touch on all kinds of practices from exhibit curation and content development, as well as preservation techniques. Museums specifically, we haven't worked directly with, but certainly we can look over to our colleagues at Maine State Museum and possibly come up with some things that we could do. I think the suggestion is a good one.
Representative McKenzie?
Yeah, and this is just a comment. Yeah, because like I say, some of these smaller entities, that museum is it, so they're kind of multifunctional. So that may be something that they may be a spinoff of the museum. But I know that happens a lot. Even at my alma mater, Fisk, is a huge collection, but they also do a lot of internal preservation stuff.
Absolutely. And the skills are transferable, and we work with so many small little libraries and in rural communities. So we'll take that to heart and see what we can do.
Representative Parkinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I'm going to jump all over the Secretary of State here because I'm just totally blown away at the fact that Mark Goins is sitting there very quiet. There's something going on that we don't know.
I told him to save his words.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't want to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative.
I don't have any other questions on my list. Mr. Secretary, again, thank you for your patience. Representative Sparks?
Real quick, Mr. Secretary, you were recently at MTSU. Can you tell us why?
My most recent visit there was to award them the College Voter Registration Award, I think for maybe the third year in a row for their work in registering students on their campus. Thank you. Hey, just one last thing, Madam Chair, if I may, and I know you're trying to get back on track. Thank you for the money that you appropriated for machines across the state. Now, all 95 counties in this election will have verified paper audit trails. So thank you for your work in making sure that happened. And also, this is my final year of this term. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to have served you, the tremendous work you do. I wish that every citizen of this state could just sit and watch sometimes. I wish they'd take the opportunity to watch how professionally you approach your work and how much you watch over and steward our taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I want to say personally, and I think I speak for everyone up here and for the legislature as a whole, you've done an amazing job. I think you and Mr. Goins and other members of your team recognized at a national level because of the quality of work that you do. You represent Tennessee well. You represent the legislature that elects you very well, and we appreciate the work that you and your staff do every day. So thank you again for being here this morning, and thank you for all the hard work. And assuming for those of us who are back for another term, we'll talk to you about another term then too. Thank you. All right, we will now move on to our trifecta of our constitutional officers and complete that trifecta with our Mr. Treasurer. Treasurer Lillard, welcome. We thank you and again apologize for making dollars wait on dimes up here this morning, but as we are trying to work through these budget hearings and get a good idea of where the state dollars are spent, and I know you're very interested in that as well. So without further ado, we'll ask you to begin your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady and committee members. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm David Lillard, Tennessee State Treasurer, in regard to the Tennessee Treasury Department budget proposal. I have Rick DeBray, Certified Public Accountant, with me as the Deputy Treasurer, and we have Jamie Wayman, CPA, as Director of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, and on his left is Steve Summerall, Assistant Treasurer for Program Services for the department. It's our pleasure to speak with you today. I'm going to shorten this up quite a bit since I know you're pressed for time and everything, and we've been over some of these things before, but I think you have at your seats, each of you, a infographic from us that you should have. The staff should have passed them out, that gives information on the Treasury programs in your district and all. It shows the amount paid in the TCRS in your district and the amount paid from investment earnings, which is about 2/3 of that amount that comes from investment earnings and not from employee dollars or government dollars. And the amounts in the deferred compensation plans of the state, we have about $11.5 billion saved in the DC plans of the state currently, and the amount of unclaimed property paid in your district in the last year, and of course the amount saved in the Tennessee Stars College Savings Program. So we're very proud of those 4 programs. That's not, of course, all the programs we have in Treasury. We have a lot of them, but these are some of the major ones to look at. I also want to point out to you that you have with you, or you have available to you, the Treasurer's annual report on the Treasury Department, which is available on our website. It was distributed electronically last fall to everyone. We'd be happy to send you another one today or send it to your staff that gives a summary of basically all of our programs in Treasury and is a good capsule view of those things if you have questions or want further information. Also, I want to point out finally that Tennessee Treasury's economic impact to the state was approximately $11.4 billion for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023. And so it's been pretty significant what we've been able to achieve. And we have earned approximately $45 billion in the last 10 years through investments for the benefit of Tennessee citizens. Today, I just want to skip to the bottom line here and talk about our budget request. Our budget request is for a total of $98.254 million, consisting of $67.995 million. That is the operating budget of Treasury, and $4 million of which is funded from state appropriations. The rest comes from dedicated revenues derived from investments that we manage in the Treasury Department principally. Additionally, part of that number is $26.382 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds that we are using to implement a new computer system for Treasury. You may recall that 15 years ago when I came here, we implemented the Concord system. That system is now approaching obsolescence, and in order to keep the department up to its technology demands and all, we're using that ARPA money to do that, in addition to some other technology upgrades in the Treasury Department. So it's a significant thing to do, and it will result in the addition of additional personnel to our department so as to do the regular work of the department while also working with the designers to design that system and to perform user acceptance testing and doing other things that are necessary in order to implement it. I also want to point out, of course, what you already know, and that is that the department's original budget request was put in before anyone knew that there was going to be a franchise and excise tax issue with the state budget in the upcoming year, and also before the State Funding Board acted on revenue estimates this year. And in light of those things, we have gone back and reevaluated what we have asked for and have dropped that to basically 3 items that we're going to talk about today here. Let me speak quickly about these items. One is we have asked for 2 driver service positions in risk management for the pothole detection project. This is a key project that we are attempting to get our arms around road hazards in Tennessee, including potholes, that we use Google technology to collect images of state roadways to detect potholes and also to report those potholes to TDOT in addition to the 1-800 number that TDOT uses with the public. And I just wanted to mention that as something that's an ongoing project that's funded from interdepartmental revenues. Also, I want to mention the criminal injuries compensation field positions we had asked for in the original budget, and the governor did not fund 2 positions to be used in Shelby County and Davidson County to work with denied claims. This is a program that has a high percentage of denied claims in it because of the several issues involved in it. One is the circumstances under which claimants are making a claim. It's usually horrific circumstances involving violent crime or other things that have occurred to them or their family or family members. In addition, sometimes you're dealing with people that don't have a great deal of education and ability to understand how to navigate a program like this and to furnish the various documents that are necessary in the program. And lastly, it's a situation where it's one that requires a lot of handholding in terms of processing these claims. And that support would be appreciated. And finally, I want to mention one other thing, and that is the Electronic Monitoring Agency Assistance Fund, the DUI Interlock Program, is the part of that fund that remains in the Treasury Department. The other devices part of that program was transferred to the Office of Criminal Justice Administration and the Department of Finance Administration by legislation that you enacted last year. The governor's budget does not fund the normal non-recurring amount to pay claims in the Interlock Fund, the DUI Interlock Fund. So what that means is that come July or August or so, the department will not have money to pay those DUI interlock claims if it's not funded. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll conclude my remarks, having kept them as brief as possible, and take any questions or discussion items that you want to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And before we get started with our questions, I do just want to highlight or underscore a couple of things that you mentioned in your opening remarks, and that is the impact that the treasurer has had on our state budget with the investment, the quality of investments and the return on investments that have been secured by the treasurer's office that have contributed in a major way to the financial stability and good health of Tennessee. So we thank you and your team for that important work. We do have questions, and we begin those with Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll echo the chair lady's praise of the. There you are.
Okay.
Echo the chair lady's praise and the confidence that our state employees have in TCRS and where we are at the current time. You mentioned the pothole detection program. I haven't had a chance to call TDOT, but about 30 minutes ago, I hit a pothole as big as my car on Interstate 40 at mile marker 222 on the way into town. So you can tell your folks that.
We'll consider you haven't given notice of that.
It was in the HOV lane, and it was a sizable pothole. So thank
Were
you.
you supposed to be there, Chairman?
Ma'am, I'm supposed to be here. So that I ask for forgiveness as I humbly tell my story there, Madam Chair. Treasurer, you have done a tremendous job. As you're talking about what made the cut and what's not made the cut, we had seen a proposed budget of $2.1 million in other funding for risk management programs. Is that still in the budget request? Programs including tort liability, auto liability, medical malpractice, workers' comp, and captive insurance. Is that still in there? And can you give us a rundown of those programs, please, sir?
Well, basically, I think that's the EMIF fund is what they're talking about, I believe. Isn't that right, Rick? The 2.1 billion.
No, that would be the total adjustment for the risk management program, running the claims.
And the governor funded that part of it,
Yes.
right? Yes, he funded that in his budget. Yeah.
Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you like to break those down for us,
Yeah,
exactly
Steve
what
Summerall,
goes,
would you break
what
that
goes
down
into
for
where?
me?
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. The Steve Summerall, Assistant Treasurer for Program Services. The Risk Management Fund pays for a number of things. Pays for tort liability claims like pothole claims that are filed against the state. It also pays for auto damage to state vehicles. If employees are involved in state and accidents, they'll pay for the auto liability damages. It also pays for medical malpractice against the state, as well as the state's workers' compensation program. So all of that is wrapped up in the Risk Management Fund, all of those programs.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Treasurer. Good to see you and your team this morning. Thankful for your leadership. And I say this with all sincerity, just based on some meetings we've had recently, and just your engagement over the last couple of years. Leadership makes a significant difference, and sometimes I think we take that for granted from all our constitutional officers, but I'm really thankful for your leadership and your accessibility to us. Quick question related to the enhanced 401k matches. We had appropriated $36 million to double the first $50 contributed by employees. Can you just speak to how many people have taken advantage of that? How much of that $36 million has been used, and just kind of an overview of where we are, please?
Well, let's see. I don't know that we have the exact number here today of how many people have utilized that program. We would have to get that for you, Chairman. But let me just say that the enhanced match, just like the basic match some years ago, has increased significantly the number of people who are saving in the 401k program and state service and everything. I mean, this is above 80-something%, is where it is now. So people who participate, and most of them who participate fully. So if the match gets up, they up their contribution and they get the entire match. So I think what you'll see when we get you and the other members, the exact number, that it's pretty significant in terms of the number of people that has benefited and served.
Very good. Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. If you could
Sure.
send that to the chair lady. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Chairman Zachary's comments. Obviously, your office has been very good communicating with most of the people in this community, this committee. I did have a question, though. Last year, you had a little over, I believe it was $58 million that designated in ARPA funds. Looked on the dashboard. It looks like we spent about $1.7 million of that. Just wondered what the resources were spent on, and are you anticipating on spending down the rest of those ARPA dollars before, my assumption is, the deadline?
Yes, sir. That's a good question, Chairman. The majority of that is for the ARIES project, the upgrade of the computer system for the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. That would be the lion's share of that. And we're in the process of formulating an RFP, which will be released in the next couple of weeks on that. And so at this point, we anticipate that all of that money will be utilized. Now, in the event that we see that it is not, we will turn it back over to the governor in time for them to reallocate, and for the committee to reallocate it and all that. And we're grateful for the support on that, because it saves the state money to use federal funds whenever possible. We're also using that money for technology upgrades of various types within the department. But again, the vast majority of that sum you cited is going to be used in the ARIES project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Leader Cochran.
Chair Lady, if you'll come back to me, if that's okay.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry. Chairman Baum.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome, Treasurer Lillard. The last several budget cycles, we have allocated several $100 million to fully fund our future liability with TCRS. And I think we're proud of the fact that Tennessee has not been like other states with large future unfunded liabilities, or like the Social Security program at the federal level. I was wondering if you could give us just a quick update on where our funding and liability stands with TCRS at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. And that's a good question. Let me see if I can find the number here exactly. There we go. Yep. Yeah, as of 2023, the funded ratio for the entire each of the component units of it is consolidated. State plan is 94.5% funded. That's the state employees and higher ed employees, et cetera. State judges and attorney generals at 93.4%. The teachers contributory teachers fund, K through 12 teachers, is at 104.91%, and local governments basically are at about 99% funded right now, is where we are on all of our funds.
And remind us, do we have plans with this proposed budget this coming fiscal year to add to that, to our TCRS fund?
Well, there'll be the actuarially determined contribution, the ADC, that the state will contribute this particular year. The normal contribution is what will be contributed this particular year to the fund. And that's just the hallmark of a good plan. We're one of the very few plans in the country who can say that we have contributed every year since probably a long, long time, our ADC 100% of it. And that's how most states get into trouble with respect to their plan, is they don't contribute 100% of the required contribution, or they have investment losses that are significant, one or the other, usually a combination of both.
Okay, I don't remember seeing a lump sum additional contribution like last year. I think we added
No, there's
$250 million
no,
or something.
there's no lump sum contribution this year additional. And we're grateful to the General Assembly for because y'all put in approximately $900 million over a 3-year period. And it was significant in terms of going through some of the market volatility that we've had here recently.
Okay, thank you.
And again, just to remind members, we did that to basically prepay our obligations and to make sure, again, this is the largest liability that the state has, our retirement plans for all of the employees who are employed by various groups within the state, whether that is local, state level, whether it's higher ed or local, K through 12 education. But again, using the dollars when we had the budget surplus that we did have to prepay that, to keep those numbers at 94%. We have a number of sister states who are, some I understand are below 50%, a number are in the 60%, and that is a catastrophe waiting to come home. So I'm grateful that we in Tennessee have had the capability and the leadership and the willingness on the behalf of the legislative body to invest those kinds of dollars and make sure that we can meet our liabilities when and if they're called upon. Representative Gant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Treasurer, thank you for being here. Good to see you. Question I had is, in your opening remarks, you mentioned the DUI interlock device. Can you expound on that and educate me a little bit about what that involves?
Well, the fund, the DUI interlock fund, it pays for an interlock device to be affixed on someone's car. If they're an indigent person, if they've been determined by the court to be indigent, it pays the cost of that so that they can work, is the theory of it, and do the other things that are essential to carry on life, like take care of your family, et cetera. And that's what that fund does, is pay those costs and everything. Of course, those who are able to pay themselves, the court finds they're able to pay, then they pay the cost of that. But it's for the indigent is who it's for.
Okay, and those dollars does that come down from the courts, I guess?
Yes, it's funded from fines, fees, and levies and other charges from court is where the money normally comes from and everything, although there's been some revenue starvation in that area in recent years where the funds coming into the program have gotten less. And this program was started, the DUI interlock program was started back in 2012 by the General Assembly, and it serves around 800 people a year, something like that is the number of claims that we pay out of that particular fund. And it was funded on the basis of non-recurring revenue initially. And as I said in my introductory remarks, every year the governor, whoever the governor is, has included those funds in the budget to pay for that particular year. This year, the governor did not include it in his funded budget. So for the first time, we're going to have an issue with respect to this fund because it doesn't carry forward a balance. And as I said, with respect to the fines, fees, and levies that have been coming into it, we've had what I'll refer to as revenue starvation in that area where it's getting to be a smaller amount of money, over time and everything.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to agree with everybody on the hard work you've done for our state. You've been recognized nationally for all the great things you've done. I've always commended you on that. Thank you for always coming to Shelby County and anywhere in the state where we ask you to come to meet with the citizens about the programs you offer. I think it has, especially the STARS program has changed people's life, the unclaimed property, just everything that you have done. I really appreciate it. And I want, everybody to know that, this committee know that you're from Shelby County, by the way. So moving on. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. A few years back, we set up the K-12 Mental Health Trust.
Yeah.
Can you give us an update on that, where we are, what it looks like? I get questions all the time in the community saying, you know, when are we going to be able to tap into those funds? And what are you doing with that 250 million? You know, I get questions all the time. So
Yeah.
I'd appreciate
The
an
money,
update on
I'll
that.
expand while Michael's coming up here. The money is, as of the end of 2023, I think the fund's value is about $246 million, $246 million. The money has been used to fund grants by Commissioner Marie Williams's department to various schools throughout the state to enhance mental health capability and treatment in those schools. And those grants, my understanding is from her, I saw her the other day and talked to her about it, are out, you know, now, and they're using the money and everything and are grateful for it and all that. Michael can talk about the investment for this is Michael Breakbill, CFA, our Chief Investment Officer, and he'll talk about the K-12 Mental Health Trust and its investments.
Thank you, Treasurer, and thank you for the question. So we're really excited about the program. We started investing, I believe, in April of 22, the portfolio as a whole. And so we have, and the portfolio was, because of legal constraints, could only invest in fixed income instruments. And so, so it has a tighter box than of investing than we have for TCRS, as an example. And so we've been investing that now for that period of time. And when rates rise, it's been hard for us. So the funds had a tough time. Through the fourth quarter of this past year, we really appreciated the interest rates coming back a little bit. I believe we closed the calendar year around 253, 256, somewhere in there. Our corpus is 225, so that's the level we can't spend below right now. So we have lots of money to be able to fund that for now. And we're really excited about the fund itself, because of where rates are, even though the market value of the fund it doesn't look that like amazing or anything. The actual earnings the fund produces are much better now than when we implemented. So it looks really good for the long term. We're very excited about it.
We're producing about 6%, 7%, somewhere in that
Exactly,
area, I think, right
exactly.
now in terms of the amount of money that's coming off of that investment portfolio.
Thank you. I didn't expect anything less. I really appreciate it. I'm just curious about it because we always get a lot of questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate it. The next question I'll ask, we can talk later about this. I know time is of essence. I'd like to get an update on the small minority-owned business fund and kind of, you know, some of the businesses that have tapped into it, the technical assistance and stuff like that. If we could
Sure, I'll
set
make
a
an appointment
time
and come
to
by
come
your
and talk
office and
about
see
that.
you, and we'll talk about that. That'd be great later.
Okay, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady and Mr. Treasurer. It's great to see you today, and just appreciate your accessibility, to echo what my colleagues have said, but also just the great job you're doing in managing our taxpayer dollars. But question I have, a couple of years ago, worked with you and Jamie, and we had a pretty comprehensive overhaul of the way veterans are able to get time in the TCRS, and it allowed for those veterans that have served after 1975, you know, they weren't given the time, but they were given the option of buying it. And I was just curious if you could give us an update of approximately how many folks have participated in that, and just kind of an update on that.
I'll ask Mr. Wayman, the director of the TCRS, to respond, Chairman.
Thank you. Jamie Wayman, Director of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. Chairman Boyd, we'll get that. I don't have that information in front of me, but I will get that to you and the committee after this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Mr. Treasurer, I think you did such a good job with your presentation, just like you do with our money. And we are, I don't see any further questioners on our list. So again, thanks to you. Thanks to all the constitutional officers who have been here this morning. It's critical work that you do on behalf of the legislature and for the citizens of the state of Tennessee. And we are very blessed in the state that we have the folks that we have who are doing that job and doing it very well. So thank you, Mr. Treasurer,
Well, thank
for
you.
your leadership.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might add that one reason that we're such a fiscally sound state and do so well compared to other states is because of the conservative excellent leadership of our General Assembly, because if you had a legislature that was rather spendthrift in its ways, then you wouldn't be in this good a shape very long in today's world. So we appreciate everything that y'all do to safeguard our state's financial standing and make sure that every dollar counts for every Tennessean. So you're a big part of that, and your colleagues are too. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. We do recognize that we're cheap and we're proud of it. So, with that, I'm going to ask our State Museum folks who are next on our list. Director Howell, welcome.
Hi.
Great to see you here.
Thank you.
And thanks to the museum for hosting all of us for a great opening event for the legislature. It's always a pleasure to be at the facility and to be reminded of what a treasure it is for our state. And we thank you in advance for what you're going to tell us today about your management of that treasure. So if you would just introduce your companion there, and then we'll get on with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Ashley Howell. I'm the executive director of the Tennessee State Museum. I have with me Sabrina Hooper, deputy director, and my voice will catch up. Just give me a second. So thank you so much for this opportunity today to share the activities of the State Museum. Overall, our budget submission does not reflect much change year over year. The increase associated in our budget is related to semi-quincentennial funding, which I'll talk about when I wrap up my report. So for today's presentation, I do want to summarize attendance, K through 12 programs, exhibitions, and project updates, including collection storage, legislative plaza renovation, capital grants, and the semi-quincentennial. So we are continuing to see positive increases in attendance. For the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we've had more than 66,000 visitors. That is a 20% increase year over year. Last fiscal year, we had an 8% overall increase to the previous fiscal year. Our K through 12 programs also continue to see increases. Those programs are on-site tours at the museum and at the Capitol, virtual field trips, traveling trunks, and teacher workshops. So for the first half of this year, we've seen a 56% increase in the number of students participating in on-site tours at the museum. And our trunk program has served 23% more students this year. Last fiscal year, we served all 95 counties through our K through 12 engagement. With our exhibitions, we are currently hosting Building a Bright Future, Black Communities and Rosenwald Schools in Tennessee. That continues through the end of this month. We also opened Tennessee Playlists, the people, places, and roots of our music, which focuses on Tennessee's music history. The exhibition is accompanied with an online exhibition, 95 Counties of Sound. In April, we are opening an exhibition of Tennessee furniture selections from the Tennessee State Museum collection. So when we talk about the collection, there is a big project ahead of us. With the Department of General Services, the State Museum is hard at work on the plans of a new collection storage facility. We broke ground on this building last spring, and the building is currently being built. We anticipate this building to be finished about this time next year. So at that time, we will begin moving the state's collection from the Polk building to the new facility. So our collection is about 170,000 artifacts. So that move is what I would consider a generational move. This is a big project, but it's important in preservation of the state's collection to provide better access to the collection for our team, but also for museums across the state. In addition, we're in the process of planning for a new museum space in the Legislative Plaza renovation. So there will be a new military museum and a Capitol Visitor Center in the space. So we are working with architects, designers, and general services on this project. As the museum continues to preserve our state's history through its collections, we were honored to receive a $5 million appropriation last year to support museums across Tennessee. We reached out to museums across the state. We received 171 applications for capital projects. The applications were more than $12 million in projects in need across the state. We made awards to 108 museums in 58 counties for museum capital needs. Just a couple of priorities there through the applications includes replacement of HVACs, roof repair, water mitigation, foundation repair, just to kind of give a scope and scale of the projects awarded. And support for museums is important as we talk about the semi-quincentennial. In 2026, the nation will commemorate 250 years of the Declaration of Independence. The state has formed a statewide commission focused on this. I serve on the commission as ex officio by position, but I also serve as chair as elected through the commission following the term by our state historian, Dr. West. The commission is planning for programs supporting history and culture statewide, and you will see funding attached to the state museum budget for this commission. So the museum continues towards its mission to procure, preserve, exhibit, and interpret objects which relate to the history of Tennessee and Tennesseans. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Well, thank you, Director. There are a lot of exciting things going on at the museum. I have the honor to serve on the board and to get regular updates on the new storage facility and all of the other things. And one of the things I want to just take a minute and ask you to speak about and remind this group that last year in our budget, we passed, we included $5 million in non-recurring funds for grant monies for museums across the state. And since we as individual legislators, we get requests from those kinds of facilities on a regular basis. I don't know about you, but I'm in no position really to evaluate or prioritize what museums or what programs might be the most effective and impactful for Tennessee state dollars. But the museum, that's their job. That's what they do. They're very good at it. And so we had asked them to take over that role of managing those grants. And having served on the, as I mentioned, on the board, we did hear a report about those grants. And I'd just like for this committee to have a good understanding and oversight of how I hope that many of you have heard from your museums back home about the difference that it made for some of them. But Director Howell, could you just share with us a little bit how many museums receive grants, kind of the average amount, and just some ideas of what sort of things these funds were able to provide dollars for?
Okay. So we were able to give awards to 108 museums. And considering this was a pilot program, we wanted to make sure that people applied, they knew about the opportunity. So thank you for sharing this information with constituents across the state. So we had 170 applications, and the need was apparent in the applications. So we truly prioritized needs of museums. And so I mentioned roof repairs, HVAC repairs, a couple of other areas of focus that we focused on: water mitigation, structural repairs, accessibility, including ADA accessibility, collection care, and capacity building. So capacity building is an example where perhaps a museum had some space that they wanted to convert to program space or exhibition space, and we were able to provide funding for museums to do so. In looking at museums, the museums were in 58 counties, and 75% of the awardees had operating budgets less than $500,000. So if you think about sort of critical needs, perhaps a museum has program support, but the roof is leaking or windows need to be replaced. Just hearing from museums across the state, the gratitude is apparent and heard, and we've enjoyed working with museums across the state to facilitate these funds.
Well, I do think sometimes we have wonderful ideas up here that don't pan out all that well, but I do think this was an idea that really was a home run for many of our museums across the state, and something that, giving funding availability that we'll certainly might want to think about continuing on in the future. And on my question list, Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Director Howell, great to see you today. And I know you mentioned just a moment ago that the semi-quincentennial celebration that's coming up. And I know for a lot of folks, they hear that word, it's just a long word, and they know it's coming up. But there's $2.1 million non-recurring in there. And could you tell this group a little bit? I mean, we're going to party like it's 1776, here in a couple of years. Could you just give us an update and tell us what that money is going to be spent on and what we can expect? Thank you.
Is comprised of state agencies, heads of state agencies like myself, Tennessee Historical Commission, Tennessee State Library Archive, State Historian, Department of Tourism. We also have legislative representatives like Chairman Boyd, and We have been planning for this commemoration since 2019. In 2021, we held listening sessions across the state in all 3 grand divisions and 1 virtually to hear from Tennesseans about what they wanted to see for the semi-quincentennial commemoration. So a couple of things that they've asked for: educational programs, workshops, educator materials, some sort of trail to connect historic sites that include the places, but also the stories across Tennessee, and also um, grant funding for communities to support these initiatives. So through this planning, the commission has put together a budget that focuses on Tennesseans and Tennessee events that have helped shaped American democracy from the Revolutionary era to the present. So that includes support for educators, including professional development, educator material support to facilitate aids for teachers in classrooms across the state. A large portion is community grants for community programs. So if you remember the American Bicentennial or even Homecoming 86, this is the type of grant program that we are modeling this grant program after. But also signature programs of the commission that may be publications, that may be large events held across the state. But overall, we are focused on engaging Tennesseans in our local history or state history as it relates to this national commemoration. So we are going to continue to meet statewide. We are planning to host summits across the state to continue the planning. And so we appreciate the support for the semi-quincentennial.
Thank you, Chair Lady. And Director, thank you for being with us and for your testimony. I wanted to go back just really quickly. I know we've already talked a lot about it, but about the grants for local museums. 3 museums in my county received funding, and I just want to say how huge that is, because as you said very accurately, many of these museums, they fund their programming effectively. They fund they bring in enough revenue through events throughout the year to pay staff, but a lot of museums are in donated buildings, maybe from a benefactor for when they were originally established, and they're old buildings, and so you can be effectively funding operations, but then if that $100,000 roof replacement comes in, like that affects the viability of your organization. And so one of those museums in particular, the Inglewood Museum in my hometown, I've been a volunteer there for about 15 years or so. And so I've been very involved in their application process, and really just wanted to say kudos to your staff. They've been excellent to work with, and that museum has no paid staff. They're all volunteer. But your folks have been very, very helpful to them in helping them get what they need to process that. And so just wanted to thank you for that. One quick question about some of your budget requests in the governor's budget. You requested a total of $388,000 in recurring cost increases for inclusion in the governor's proposed budget. 90,000 of that was for your museum's operational budget. Those were not included in the governor's proposed budget. But can you tell us specifically the $90,000, why that was needed, and how the absence of that would affect your operations?
Okay. Thank you for the comments, and thank you for the question. So the $90,000 was specifically associated with cost and needs in helping us vacate the Polk building. I'll give you an example. We are continually um, going through item storage areas. This is outside of the collection of the former museum. We have had a dumpster sort of in our loading dock for 2 years straight. We fill it up, they take it, it comes back. That's just one example of a cost that we are incurring just to vacate the Polk building. In addition, this has been well documented and discussed, is we continue to have building issues at the Polk building, which also kind of sometimes we need to call in extra support even outside of general services just to kind of help mitigate the sort of the issues at Polk. The good thing is we have we know our collection. We have been well trained in the last couple of years of mitigation of water intrusion or environmental issues that could occur. We have a great team who is ready to respond, and truly that support was just to kind of help with that process.
Thank you very much. And thanks again for what you do to preserve our state's history. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't have any other questions on my list. Director Howell, again, underscore what Leader Cochran said. Tennessee has an amazing history as a state, and there's so many things that would be lost to posterity without the work of the museum. And I'm very proud of the facility that has been built. I think it's, I've visited some other state museums. I think ours is best. But again, we've got great staff making that happen, and I think we have a commitment from this body, I would hope, to make sure that we continue to provide the resources to make sure that we continue to just take care of what the history that was left so that we can learn from it, and that our children and grandchildren will be able to see where we came from, and hopefully to be proud of the progress that's been made. So thank you for your work. And with that, we will let you get back to doing fruitful things at the museum, clearing out the Polk and packing up things to move to storage, and all of the hard work that's going on to get ready to move into that new facility, which we are excited about. And hopefully before we leave session, we might actually have a ribbon cutting, maybe.
Next year, hopefully. Yes.
Well, I
Fingers
can dream.
crossed.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And with that, we're going to ask our folks from the military to come forward. General Baker, if you would have a seat and introduce you and the folks that you have with you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm General
Good morning.
Ross, Adjutant General for Tennessee Military Department, Tennessee National Guard, which includes TEMA. So to my right, I have Director of TEMA, Patrick Sheehan. To his right, Ms. Jennifer Pontoff, who is part of our Administrative Services team. To my left, Assistant Adjutant General Jason Glass for Air. To his left, Colonel Promotable Steve Turner, who's Army ATAG. And to the far end, our CF Construction Facilities Management Director, Colonel Milligan, Andy Milligan. Behind me, I have Colonel Adams, Director for Admin Services there at the Military Department. And Miss Robin Inglis is also here from the Admin Services. And right behind me, I have Alex Pelham, who's Chief of Staff for TEMA, and then Chief Warrant Officer Scarlett Bernier, who is over our Education Department, specifically the STRONG Act. And I have our new Legislative Liaison, Lieutenant Colonel Brian Salaka. So that's our team. And pending any other opening comments, I'll start into our budget request.
Ms. Nomer had a bad, I looked at something crossways. So thank you again for being here and for your team. And we would just ask you, yes, to continue with your presentation.
Okay, ma'am. Our goal is to provide the best services to our state, both day to day and in times of crisis. We take pride in our motto, which is ready now. Our role is to be a supporting partner to other state and federal local agencies, but also a partner to our airmen and soldiers in order to create a capable, mission-ready force. I recognize many of you in this room as supporters of the National Guard, all of you as that. We see fellow veterans in here and those who have helped us with some key legislation over the past years. We thank you for that support. We're presenting what we believe is a very responsible budget today. There's 3 items on here that go above and beyond our base budget. We're excited about the continued interest and growth of our STRONG Act, even with the challenges that double-digit growth brings in participation. Next, we want to address the critical need to bring on some new firefighters at our training facility down in Milan. And finally, we're facing the challenge of rising utility costs at our armories and facilities. So our total request for cost increases is $1.7 million, but $1.1 million of that is federally reimbursed or matching, so it won't be of a cost to the state. I'm going to go through those 3 items real briefly, and then we'll save time for any questions that you may have. So our first request applies to our STRONG Act program, and there are people in this room that have supported that program, championed that program. So I'm here to report some good news of money well invested. In 2018, at the request of the Tennessee Military Department and several of you on this committee, the legislature funded our initial STRONG Act legislation. From that initial cohort of 191 students, we have seen growth every year. We now have 75 educational partners that accept STRONG Act dollars that include universities, community colleges, private and post-secondary institution, and our TCATs. Extremely successful program with significant annual increases in double-digit percentage growth in applications and students. Since its inception, you have provided $11.7 million in educational benefits to our soldiers and airmen that has impacted almost 2,000 of our formation, 1,931 to be exact. About 3/4 of those are over on the Army side, but it's especially critical to our Air National Guardsmen as they don't always get the benefits, for whatever reason, the federal benefits that go along that the Army side gets. So our number of applications received has increased from 225 in that initial year to we're approaching 1,300 this year. So a great success story. To go along with that, Friday, I was notified by the Department of Defense and the Pentagon that the Tennessee National Guard, specifically the STRONG Act program, is going to be the recipient of this year's Army Community Partnership Award with a partnership that we have with Lipscomb. Over 30 states submitted applications for this. 6 will be recognized as model programs. So that's a win-win and a big win for us here in Tennessee. My 1 year as Adjutant General, I've received numerous requests from other states who either don't have the program that we have here in Tennessee and are looking to replicate not only the success of the program, but the legislation as well. So I gladly forward that over to other Adjutant Generals. Due to the increasing number of participants in the program, we're requesting an adjustment to our funding. Our request is for an additional $500,000 in recurring funding, and this will bring our annual funding to $3.5 million per year. Our second priority that we're asking for impacts our firefighters down in Milan, Tennessee, the newly acquired Milan Arsenal. We took over about 16,000 acres down there about a year and a half ago. So this adjustment requests funding to support 15 firefighters to meet federal requirements for a fire and emergency services program at what we refer to as VTS Milan. In combination with the planned infrastructure changes that we'll be investing in over the years, we're requesting that funding for these salaries to fill these positions, and it also helps us meet the federal requirements that we have down there. These positions have been briefed in previous years as part of our strategic expansion plan, but I want to emphasize that this request does not add any additional cost or new jobs to our budget. We analyzed our needs within our department and took steps to reclassify previously vacant positions that were hard to fill positions. So these positions are 100% federally reimbursed through National Guard Bureau and is no added cost to Tennessee. It enables us to meet the federal requirements that we have there, mitigate fire concerns, save lives, infrastructure, and protect the training resources that we have and will have. So this request is for $989,100. Our final priority addresses the impact that rising utility cost has on our armories. Our energy cap report shows that the cost of consumption exceeded the state appropriation last year. So this funding request is for an additional $115,000 to cover increased costs for our utilities due to inflation and a new solid waste management contract that's in place. We're grateful for the support regarding all these proposals and continue to ensure that our budget reflects the values and priorities of the governor's goals and the state of Tennessee's mission. Your leadership and support on these issues have a meaningful and positive impact as indicated through the STRONG Act, and we would appreciate any support that you can give us. I'll welcome any questions me and my team do that you may have on these three items or any other items that you'd like to talk about.
Okay, thank you, General Ross. We appreciate your good work and congratulations on your award. We do have several members with questions, and we'll start with Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, General Ross, for being here, your team. And Coach Adams, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you for kicking my butt on the football field back in the late 70s and early 80s. There's a lot of people thinks that you should have kicked it a little harder, but it sunk in. So thank you for doing it. It's great to see you. One big topic and one big thing that's coming up, I've just got a few questions on this. We're going to go back in time a little bit. The fiscal year 21-22 budget appropriated $500K supplemental funding to provide support at the southwest border. Mm-hmm. According to a press release issued by Governor Lee, there is a commitment to deploy 2 additional waves of Tennessee National Guard troops to assist with the ongoing efforts to improve the border safety. How many troops, my questions are, how many troops were deployed in 2021 and 22 utilizing the $500,000? What specifically does the funding go toward when troops are deployed in this manner? And was all of the $500,000 utilized for that deployment? I have some follow-ups.
Okay. Yes, sir. I can answer that question just based off of not only, even though I wasn't here, I was certainly in the Tennessee National Guard at that time. I happened to be overseas, but I know the model that we use. So typically that's about 125 person deployment. Is typically the model that we use. And as far as what does those monies go for, that money goes for not only transportation to get those soldiers out there, but also their pay and their salaries while they're out there. So that's how that money is allocated and used. And we've done that several times, not just then, but currently we have troops out there now, but not on state active duty. We have them out there in what we refer to as a Title 10 role, which is a federal mission. We have about 125 out there right now. We try to match those salaries for our soldiers as whether they're on Title 10 or whether they're on state active duty. So as far as their pay and their benefits, it looks the same as if they were to be out there on Title 10 missions. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Hicks. Thank you, Chairman. Do you know if all of the money was utilized in that deployment?
I can't affirmatively answer that. I can certainly get that back to you. I have some people here on my team that may could answer that. I'm getting a nod. Yes, this is our administrative services person that works all of our budgets for us, and it was in this position at that time.
Yes, Representative, it was executed, and we actually executed more than 500,000 that we took out of our operating budget.
Representative Hicks.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. So how many troops are there to be deployed? They say there's going to be 2 additional waves. The department estimates deployment of those waves and how much that it will cost. Is there going to be 2 additional waves that's going to be going to the southwest border, and how much will that cost?
We are preparing those right now. We're in coordination with the Texas Army National Guard. So the answer to the first question, will there be 2 waves? Yes, sir, but there's a caveat to that. So those were for 100 soldiers, 2 iterations of 50 soldiers each. We ask for volunteers. That we are the volunteer state, and we typically have no issues whatsoever getting those, and we didn't this time. If we ask for 100 volunteers, we'll get 250. So then it becomes matching those soldiers with the right jobs as to what our taskings are out there. So back to your original question, yes, it's 2 waves of 50, but that's probably going to cost us about 45 soldiers. Our soldiers believe and enjoy and look forward to doing these missions. So the same soldier would stay on for the second mission. So we won't send 50, have to have a week layover and an overlap to train the next 50 that comes out. That first 50 will go, and out of that 50, about 40 to 45 will stay the entire duration of the mission. As far as the cost for that, we're working through that with Texas on the lodging, transportation. But since those soldiers will be staying, a large majority, that cuts down our transportation cost quite a bit. It also cuts down salaries where we don't have to have an overlap in Group 1 and Group 2. So there's usually about a 5-day left seat, right seat ride there. The total cost that we're estimating right now is somewhere around $1.6 million. That's transportation, pay, and allowances. For the mission.
Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the last
Did that answer
thing,
your question, sir?
It did. Thank you very much. It did. In a press release on February the 4th, it provided that the first wave will be sent out within 60 days, is what they're saying. Do you have any idea when the second wave would be? We're just trying to get a time.
It will be consecutive. So once we send our first, we're again working with Texas. They've been receiving a lot of support from various states across. They have to line up all those resources, logistics, housing for us, and those things. We're anticipating right now that it's going to be certainly within the 60-day time limit of when that press release was gone out. It could be somewhere into early to mid-March when the first wave goes. Again, since a large majority of those soldiers will be staying for the entire duration, it will just be consecutive. Whether it's a 37-day model that we send our soldiers out there for. Some states do a much shorter model, 2 weeks. That's not enough time to get on the ground. It takes us about 3 days on the front end to bring our soldiers in to make sure that they have all the prerequisite training that Texas requires, to get them, transport them out there, get them boots on the ground, understanding the mission. If you try to do all that in a 2-week time frame, it's really an uphill climb. So Texas requested a 37-day period for us. So that's what we'll adhere to. But it looks to be like somewhere about mid-March when we'll send them.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, all of you, for what you do for our state. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And General, it's great to see you today. Right here. Right here.
See you. Now I got you.
Yeah, the question I have is on the Storm Act. So last year, $5.2 million was appropriated for that. And so I have a couple of questions here. There were 2 positions that were allocated in that funding. Have they been filled? And then the follow-up question I'll go ahead and give you is how does the Storm Act work? Because this year we've also have the Resilient Tennessee Revolving Loan Fund, which kind of appears to be in that same universe. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Patrick will.
Mr. Chairman,
So we phase this over time. So knowing, so we didn't ask for those, like the positions that we have, but the resilient revolving loan fund, the Storm Act, those are the same thing. So we're in the process of onboarding those two personnel now. So we've got, so we're building this in preparation for applying for the federal grant. There's about 7 states that are running a little bit ahead of us that just based on when their legislatures were in session. And so we're in the process of building this now. So we're onboarding those personnel. We're going through their applications now in preparation for going live with this program in the next year.
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, how do those programs work when you get them up and running? What can a local government do? I mean, is it a warning that a flood is coming, or are there actually things that you can do to kind of create a reservoir to divert water? How will that work?
So a big problem that a lot of our jurisdictions have, and not just in Tennessee, but across the nation, smaller jurisdictions have trouble accessing capital to take advantage of federal grants or state grants or other grants that are out there. And so this creates a low interest pool of loans that jurisdictions can apply for that they can use for their non-federal matches. And so if they have a mitigation program to do culvert enlargements or build safe rooms in public spaces or in schools, these loans provide avenues for them to be able to access low cost capital. It's very similar and in many ways modeled after the revolving loan funds that the US EPA has, that TDEC administers for wastewater, stormwater, and public drinking water systems.
Okay, Chairman Sparks.
Thank you, General. General, on the Strong Act, go back to that, provides funding for tuition reimbursements for eligible members of the Guard. Last year, you mentioned that you wanted to create a dashboard to digitize the application process. Can you expand on that and how many folks are enrolled in the program?
I can expand on it, and I'll have Chief Bernier here expand a little bit more. We still have that goal. We're not there yet, as that's awfully expensive. We've reached out to some partners to see if there's expertise either within the state or go out on the commercial market to look at that. And we were approached with hundreds of thousands of dollars to create what we want. So we looked for an in-house solution. We're still not there. And Chief Bernier, would you like to comment on that anymore? Yeah, sure.
Yes, sir. So we actually have a meeting with,
They can't hear you.
oh, I'm so sorry. We actually have a meeting with THEC next week because like General Ross said, our in-house solution, we built it up, then that person left for other lucrative endeavors. So what we're trying to do is model our program on the Hope Scholarship Application Fund using that same platform. We're meeting with THEC and STS. Oh, actually, it's this week, this Thursday, to try to start it up that way using what we already have built and then piggybacking on the THEC.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, and you also said, sir, how many people we have?
Yes, ma'am.
Currently. So for the fall semester, we had 709 students, that's Air and Army, that we paid for. I don't know how many we have in currently. Last year, we had 744 applications for the spring, summer. So given our growth, I would anticipate we'll have probably about 850 students that are using it for this semester.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Sparks.
Yeah, General Ross, this question for you. You may not be able to answer this, but this open border crisis scares me. It should scare every one of us in Tennessee. I know you couldn't answer this, but how many Hamas or type of terrorists who have made it across this border? Have you heard anything?
Sir, I have not on the briefings that I get. I've been, this is not the first time that Tennessee's been there, either on Title 10 or state active duty. We've gone to different locations, and I've been there. I was there in December visiting our troops out there. Not as active in the sector that they're in now. I've been to 3 different sectors out there over the last year and visited our troops. And in one sector is very busy, another sector is completely different. I couldn't answer the question as to how many of bad actors are coming across there. We're here to answer the mission and be successful with it, regardless. So I don't know that, but I do have a follow-up comment on the Strong Act because it may be confusing when we say We don't know how many have applied at this point, and you're thinking it's February. We're into the second semester. Why don't you know? So it's the way the applications work. They can wait up to a month after the semester is over with to apply for reimbursement. And so that's a challenge for us too. So we never really know until the semester is over with how many that we had that were planning on using the STRONG Act.
Yes, sir. Back on this open border
Yes, sir.
crisis. This question is coming from somebody that's very, very credible. He's also asking about Iran, Venezuela, China, other intelligence service agents that are coming across here. My friend was killed in Iraq, Sergeant Asbury Hahn. We lost 58,300 young men that were 22 years of age, never returned home to their families or moms. This border stuff, maybe I'm the only one that's going to mention it up here other than Representative Hicks. It's really worrisome. We think we got problems now. I've had 2 fentanyl overdoses within the past month. I had to do one of them's funeral to look a young man, family in the eye when they've got three daughters left behind, and this mother that's never going to be, both mothers are never going to be right. My friend that lost his life, his family was never right after that loss. And it's a serious issue, and I hope this committee and other members takes it as serious as we need to. Thank you, sir.
Well, sir, not to have an antidote for that, because I was there on the deployment when Asbury lost his life. But I've just returned from D.C. last night with 54 other adjutant generals and Chief of the National Guard Bureau, and specifically the director for the Army National Guard talked about this topic. But they talked about it from a framework of federal missions that the 54 states have done out there. And there's a great disparity between the states. And he used a framework of 5 years. In the last 5 years, how many federal missions that different state National Guards had participated in there. And there's a great disparity between states that have done that mission, and there's a significant number of states that have never done that mission. I know the category we fit in Tennessee, because I've been a lifelong member of the Tennessee National Guard, and I've seen what's happened over the last 6 or 7 years. We were out there working with our friends in Texas well before this became a crisis, in both a federal role and a state active duty role. And that was acknowledged in the meetings that I was in earlier Saturday in DC.
Okay, Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, General Moss, for being here today. I just want to say thanks to you and your team for the incredible work that you're doing. And so I had an opportunity to fly out to Millington with your staff when I saw a bunch of these volunteers, and it's pretty amazing. They truly are volunteers, and it's amazing to see a room full of them who are willing to stand up and defend our southern border and head out to Texas to help our sister states across the nation. So thanks to you and your leadership and your team, and for those individuals who are willing to do that. I know that there was a large group there, and as you said, there were many more that didn't get a chance to go, that really wanted to go and serve their communities there in Texas. But just want to say thank you for that. Director Sheehan, I do have a question for you before I go there. We got to know each other through a tragic event many years ago, and devastated our community. But little did I know you were going to be traveling all over the state in multiple cases. I felt like that may have been your first big one, but I want to say to you and your team, thanks for all that you've done, not just with the COVID stuff, but with all the natural disasters. It'd be nice to take a break for a little bit, but unfortunately you haven't had a chance to do that. So thank you to you and your team. In September of 22, FEMA got a federal opportunity grant of $185 million for cybersecurity improvements across the state for those that were eligible for those plans. Did we receive any of those funds? Did Tennessee receive any of those funds from that grant pool? And if so, how much did we receive, and how have we been using that money?
We did receive the funds. The amount is not on the top of my mind, but we have the governor has a cybersecurity council, and working with STS, the executive director of
STS is the chair of our cybersecurity co-chair, along with the governor's chief operating officer. So working with our partners at Homeland Security, we've been working on projects to benefit local governments. So I've been a part of a number of different iterations of cybersecurity councils at a state level for quite a while. And our local jurisdictions are usually suffer, right? So a lot of local jurisdictions don't have a full-time chief information officer or chief information security officer. Sometimes it's a hobbyist. And in the dynamic threat environment that we face in internet security, cybersecurity, it's just not enough. So we're creating opportunities for jurisdictions to be able to access CIOs and CISOs as a service. So looking at ways that they can just access services that we'll be able to provide statewide through a number of contracting opportunities that we're in the process of developing now. So not directly under my purview on that side of it, but we're administering these grants and looking to bolster security at all echelons of government. And so not just state infrastructure, though that's certainly very important, but also trying to increase the capability of our local government partners, whether rural or urban.
Thank you. Just wanted to say thanks for that because, these local communities are the outposts of state government. We do have the ability to get resources that they can't possibly afford, particularly in our rural communities. So I think it's really important. I would also like for the committee to know that I was contacted by someone, General, from your department. We are going to have a deployment in late summer from some of our military servicemen and women. I think there's going to be a little over 250 from my Cookeville Armory. And so I would encourage my colleagues to get involved in the process of loving on these families before they leave. And so appreciate them and their service to our state.
Yes, sir, Representative. Statewide, that'll touch about 1,000 Tennesseans.
Okay, we do have several more questions on the list. The Department of Veteran Services is waiting as well, so I want us to be sensitive of time. We're about 10 minutes into their allotment. Next up is Chairman Kiesling.
Thanks, Chairman. I'll make this quick to you, Director Sheehan. Are there any additional tools that your department currently needs that we as a General Assembly can assist you with regarding disasters? And we know God's in control. Disasters are going to happen, but immediately, is there anything that you feel that we can do, sir?
I think there's no magic bullet, Representative Kiesling. It's, we're trying to bend the arc over time, right? So we're continuing, we evaluate tools, we advocate for those. In plusher budget years, we've certainly been, General Assembly and the governor's office have given us opportunities to add those tools. So we have personnel at TEMA who continue to look for ways for us to innovate and ask questions about are our legacy tools, the tools that we've built in the past, or the tools we're using today, adequate for the changing environments that we have. And we continue to do that. And we'll continue to advocate for those things that we need, sir.
Thank you for your leadership. Thanks for being here today as well. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Chairman Gant.
Thank you, Chairman. General, good to see you. I actually want to try to call you something else, but that probably wouldn't be proper here as we go back a long time in Hardeman County. So, but thank you for your service and your whole team here and what you do for the citizens of Tennessee. I have two questions. We see our society breaking down on many fronts across our nation, and even here across our state, we see lawlessness escalating in certain areas. And do you see the National Guard here in Tennessee ever playing a role in a situation where lawlessness is out of control in certain parts of our state? And I know that's the governor's call, but if you're willing to expound on that, I'd like to hear it.
Well, I think we have played a role in the past, and we're always ready. We're ready now when asked, but we always play a supporting role to the local jurisdiction, to our Tennessee Highway Patrol. We bring a different dynamic, just the uniforms that we wear sometimes. We bring a different dynamic to a situation. So Never know when we'll be asked, but we're prepared to assist, but we do so in a supporting role.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one more question. Concerning I know we've talked a lot about the border crisis, and has Secretary Mayorkas from the federal side reached out to us? Do we know of any illegal immigrants that are being transported here to Tennessee in the overnight hours, or, I mean, is any of that taking place that we have knowledge
My
of?
team has had no direct communication with Secretary Mayorkas's office, nor have we received any intelligence that would lead us to believe that, other than open source reporting that we see on the news.
So as of today, we don't have any knowledge of any illegal immigrants being shipped here to
Our
Tennessee.
department's not tracking any of that, and we have several contacts at National Guard Bureau and through the Department of Defense, and we monitor several channels, but we have not been contacted as a Tennessee Military Department.
Okay, thank you, sir. Great to see
It's
you.
great to see you, sir.
And next up is Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Just a quick comment. I during my legislative report on last Friday and talking about the different departments we would talk to today, and one of them being you. Some of your colleagues heard that statement and they wanted me to pass on to you. Well done, job well done, and thank you for what you do. And everybody in Hardeman County is just praising you for your work, so we thank you.
Well, Representative Shaw, I appreciate that. I'm a product of them.
Well, thank you, and appreciate you being from the district. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
General Ross, we appreciate you and your team's time here and for your comments. The members have been interested and are appreciative of your work. And so we thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
In an effort to begin to get back on schedule, I will invite up the Department of Veterans Services and Commissioner General Baker. And Commissioner Baker, feel free to begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Baum. Sorry for the mini home reunion there. My colleagues out of the military department. Good to be here today, to be in front of the House Finance Ways and Means Committee, talk about our FY25 budget. Thanks for having us over. Let me just quickly introduce my team. To my right is my Deputy Commissioner, Mike Scholes. Chrissy Yamasi, my budget director. Over on the other table, I have my Assistant Commissioner for Cemetery Ops, Patrick Rice, my Assistant Commissioner for Benefits and Claims, Lorenzo Wills, and my Assistant Commissioner for Appeals and Accreditation, Travis Murphy. Like I said, it's good to be here today. I want to start off just quickly talking about a few accomplishments the department had in FY23 as of 30 June. We had over 9,100 veterans we served last year in our 13 field offices by our 25 veteran service officers across the state. Just over 2,700 burials that we interred at our state veteran cemeteries. 2,145 customer service inquiries we were able to resolve last year. 3 of our state veteran cemeteries received Operational Excellence Awards from the National Cemetery Administration. So just for some context there, there's 123 state and tribal veteran cemeteries across the United States. They are inspected on a 3-year rotation by the National Cemetery Administration. It's 95 different areas they look at. It's very intense inspection. Most states, if they're fortunate, receive 1 of those in a year. We received 3 last year. So kudos to our cemetery team for keeping those cemeteries in a pristine condition. Our appeals team was able to get $15.6 million in retroactive payments to our veterans and their families across the state last year. We also had a 92% positive outcome rate when we provided oral advocacy. So just for a benchmark at the national level, that's around 76, 77%. So we're tracking really well there when compared to the nation. And then finally, we received a Abraham Lincoln Pillars of Excellence Award last year for our county service veteran virtual hearings when they have their appeals. This started with one county during the pandemic. We're now up to 59 counties that provide that opportunity for veterans to go to their local county service office versus coming to Nashville, fighting traffic, having to get a hotel room and all of that, and with very positive results. So we're real proud of that. Our only cost increase we got this year is to replace our 5 grave site locators that are located at each of our 5 state veteran cemeteries. So these grave site locators are basically, for those of you that's been there, you go in, you put the name in of the service member or their family member that you're looking for, and it tells you what section, what row they're in. They are very outdated to the point now that NCA, National Cemetery Administration, no longer supports them. STS will not even allow them on the state network because of the security violations that it proposes. So, you know, we feel like our customers, they're broke a lot of times. They have in some cases, an old dot matrix type printer from, it's way back there, that we have to send off to places like Connecticut and other places to get repaired. So we have workarounds that we've kind of installed with note cards above the machines to tell people how to find their loved one, but that's not optimum. We want to replace those for all 5 state veteran cemeteries. That's one-time $300,000 non-recurring dollars we're asking for there on that particular item. That's our only cost increase for this budget cycle. I would like to mention a couple of other initiatives we got going on inside the agency since last time. One is our Honor Guard grant program. That was passed last year. It was Public Chapter 404. It basically said if you're a voluntary service organization out there performing honorary guard services at either a private cemetery or one of our state veteran cemeteries or a national cemetery, does not matter. You can be reimbursed for your expenses, cost of getting there, food, training, supplies. Since that law went in effect 1 January of 2024, we've had 8 different groups that have provided an application to us. One has been approved and contract's been signed, and there's 6 others that are still awaiting vendor registration in Edison so that we can make sure they get those payments. And we'll have to get a contract signed from them as well. But excited to see that program come on board and reimburse those folks for the great service they provide. Another thing we've launched inside of Middle Tennessee right now, just a few counties here that we're working in, is our Tennessee Veteran Ready Business Recognition Program. So that's a lot of words to say. Basically, we're trying to take advantage of a great opportunity that exists for both our businesses, small and large, and veterans that are either coming to this state or thinking about relocating to the state when they come off active duty, or that are inside the state currently serving. So this just highlights the skills and attributes that veterans already have. It highlights them to the business and potential employers that are out there. It also recognizes that there's a lot of businesses out there that do a great service already in hiring our veterans, in recruiting our veterans, and to try to provide, careers for our veterans. So we really want to take advantage of that. There's a great opportunity right now when you look at the number of jobs that are available just in the Middle Tennessee area. If you look at the number of people on unemployment in that same area, if you took all those folks tomorrow and put them to work, you'd still have about 28,000 vacant jobs. So we're just saying, hey, let's have a pathway for veterans to get inside of those companies and make a difference for them long-term as well. Finally, our Customer Service Academy. This was one of our 4-year strategic plan initiatives that we introduced this past year as we updated our 4-year strategic plan. It basically just sets our employees down and gives them a chance at having some real training in how to meet the public and how to deal with veterans as they come into our offices for various claims, or maybe they want to get pre-registered for a burial at one of our state veteran cemeteries. It's we kind of assume sometimes that's a natural, innate capability that everybody has. But we find that no matter how long you've been doing this type work, it's really good to sit down with somebody that does this. We have some natural scenarios, some vignettes built in there where we do some role playing. Everybody that's been through, we had our initial course in November, had 18 graduates. They were all inside our department. We're going to try to get all 127 members through that course over the coming months and years. And we're very proud that we've been able to add that to part of our human capital investment of trying to train our employees and making them ready to be the best they can at what they do. Finally, just a quick recap. Our only cost increase for this year was for the gravesite locators for $300,000. It's non-recurring, and our total budget ask this year is $13,722,500. Chairwoman Hazelwood, subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Thank you very much for your concise report. And I do have some folks on the list, but I was going to ask on the gravesite locators, that's a one-time expense, but is there any sort of ongoing maintenance associated with those, or what is the life of the product?
We don't have any specific maintenance funding right now towards that. I think we can take care of that out of operational funding going forward. Patrick, you have anything else on that you want to discuss?
No, the recurring costs on that are minimal, and I'm in agreement that I believe that's something that we'll be able to pay for out of our operational funds that we currently have.
Thank you, Chair Lady Hazelwood and General Baker, General Scholes, and team. Good seeing you guys. And you basically answered the question about veteran services organizations helping with the graveside services, and we do appreciate that. The only question that I had left on there was, what is the average grant amount award for each one of these, or do you have that information now?
So we don't have an average yet because we hadn't had any invoices come in. We expect to start seeing them this month for January expenses, because the program only technically was available 1 January. Now, what was given last year was $75,000 one-time non-recurring. So what we did is we put a max cap on $7,500 per any one VSO organization. That's the limit currently.
Listen, I just also want to say I really appreciate the leadership that you guys have brought and your team to this organization. You have made a big difference. You're so responsive. You cut through the bureaucracy to take care of veterans and their families. And I've seen the change. And I just want to tell you how much, as a veteran, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you all for everything that you do every day. Last year's budget included $1.1 million in funding to replace an end-of-life customer claim management system to track veteran benefits and appeals claims. Is that in operation now? And if not, when do you anticipate that it will be?
So right now, we've just finished the RFI process, and we're getting ready to launch the request for proposal. We've got several companies that are looking at that, been working through the RFI process. That's a pretty intricate system. We want to get it right, but right now we're looking at probably third or fourth quarter of 25 having that ready to start implementation. In fact, we're looking now at how we do that implementation once we get that system on board, because it's not going to affect our claims representatives, but also the county service officers out there too. So we want to take that into consideration, and we want to make sure we give them all the support, as well as whoever gets that contract, that they make sure they have embedded in that contract some really lengthy support training and all. Travis, anything you want to add to that?
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Chair Lady and Commissioner Baker. It's good to see you and your team here. Just a question about the Governor's Veterans Fellowship Program. Could you talk a little bit more about what this program entails? I know there was a budget request to establish 6 positions to a tune of about 738,000, and talk about maybe how that request, I guess how that's incorporated with that particular program.
So we picked that up in last year's budget. It was 6 positions. One of those positions is the program director. And so the other 5 are basically to bring veterans as they get near their active duty release date, hopefully as far out as we can, but bring them into state government as a fellow. What they will do, we will, through the vetting process, try to determine, okay, where is it this veteran has a real interest to serve in the public capacity, and go out there and really, kind of look at the 23 agencies we have and see if there's a kind of a natural fit. As we bring them into the program, it's a year-long internship. They will go and they will get exposed to all 23 agencies. In fact, that's part of the program, is for them to get some exposure to all those agencies, learn what those agencies do, and kind of see how it all comes together. And then as they progress through the phases of the program, in the 3rd phase, we hoped for them to be able to locate that position inside that agency that they've already been working a project with, or some kind of assignment they've had, and be able to take that information, all that expertise they have from the veteran experience and service they've had, and match it with a state government position, and allow them to continue on serving, and just, make state government more efficient in the areas that we can. I think out of this past cohort, we've already had 2 that's obtained state positions through that fellowship. So and that's just in the first cohort. So we're looking forward. We just brought the 2nd cohort on in January of this year. Looking forward to what they may be able to do in the next 12 months.
So how do potential candidates find out about the program? Do you go and seek them out, or do they come to you? How is that process?
So right now, they're basically focusing on the 5th Group Special Forces up in Fort Campbell and the 160th SOAR up there. That's where we wanted to kind of do the start of the program, allow us to learn what, how we can make the program better. They already also had a kind of a vetting system for people wanting to come into public sector, and it kind of gives us some qualified candidates to bring in and allow them to transition into state government at the end of that year, if they can find that position and if that agency wants to have them. But right now, it's limited to those 2 entities. We're looking at other ways we can look at expanding that in the future, but right now it's just those 2.
So how big is a potential cohort, I guess, of candidates? Is that
5 would be the max.
5,
You got
okay.
6 positions. You got 1 program director and then 5 potential candidates.
So I imagine the other state agencies and departments, I imagine this is something that they're certainly interested in, and communication is good between you all and those other departments as well.
It is, and I've already got some feedback from this 2nd cohort. They've already been to several departments and introduced themselves and got that department's briefing. Several commissioners have already reached out to me and said, "Hey, look like a great class coming on board." Very excited to see that, and looking forward to what they can bring to state government.
Absolutely. Great program. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair Lady.
Just a follow-up on that, is there a way to grow that capacity for that program? I know we have a lot of state jobs, and so 5 people in a cohort, that's, it's great, but it's not a large number against the need. So what would it take to increase the capacity in that program?
Well, I guess we would need to look at kind of how it's operating now, and how much capacity it actually has. But with just 1 program director, we would need to sit down and look at how could we expand that. And I think that's one of the things we want to do going into 25, is just think about that. And then we would probably come back to you with a little bit more of a validated answer versus me just sitting here and giving you some numbers off the top of my head.
All right, well, we'll look forward to that.
Okay.
Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Chair Lady. Thank you for your time, Dave. Just had two quick questions. One, in 22-23, we provided your department with a grant, I think, for $20 million for Wings of Liberty in Clarksville. If you could give me an update on where we are with that project and how much money's been spent, and what the outlook looks like for it.
Sure. So right now, we have signed the lease for the 33 acres, and we're looking at starting construction on the actual museum itself in May of this year. So, they think they can be done in 12 months. So we very well may be doing a ribbon cutting next year in the summer. Chrissy, you know the exact number they've spent on that so far?
No, sir, we've spent about, I think they spent about 18,000 thus far out of the 20. Not
Okay.
very much.
Just for the record, her microphone wasn't on. She stated that they've spent about
Oh.
18,000 of the 20 million. But just to follow up on one other one, I think it was $500,000 last year for the Honor Foundation. Just wondered what the update on that was and how that money's being spent as well.
Yeah, so we have disseminated that money to them as well. It's one-time money as well. So any updates on the final numbers on that, Chrissy?
Yes, sir. So, is it on? Yes, sir. So, total spent thus far is 215,000, sorry, sir, 792, 43% of their budget has been spent thus far.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Commissioner, how are you? I have just a few questions about county veteran service officers. How many counties currently have a veteran service officer hired, and what contribution is the state making toward their salaries or benefits?
So they're completely resourced by the county. Right now, as far as I'm understanding, there's only 2 counties in the state that do not have either a part-time or full-time county service officer. But we do not, at this time, we do not fund any of their salary or any of their equipment. And we haven't since I've been here. So Travis, anything you want to add to that?
No, sir, that's accurate.
Okay.
Representative Barrett.
So knowing that you don't contribute anything to their salary or equipment, we also have requirements for things that they have to do. There's, I think, program VetraSpec and some other things that they have to have. We're not contributing to the cost of them getting a license to use that either. Is that correct?
We do. Do we pay for their VetraSpec? I think we do, right?
We do not
We do not?
currently.
Okay.
When the department transitioned to the electronic claims management system, I believe the department paid for the first year, but there is no funding currently allocated to the counties.
And are we also requiring these county service officers to attend certain training or things throughout the course of the year?
We
And
do.
we're not paying for that either?
We provide the annual training conference. We also do regional training, and we do monthly lunch and learns. But I do not think we provide any payment for that training. That's correct. Their counties have to send them on their nickel.
Representative Barrett.
One last question. Given all of this, what is the retention rate that we have for county service officers? What's the turnover? How often are we having to replace these people?
I can't give you a specific number. I do know that it happens quite a bit. And I mean, I think, some of it, they're part-timers, some of them are full-time. And I think some people come into that job not really understanding what that's fully entails. So I don't have a specific turnover rate for you county veteran officers, but I know it does happen occasionally.
Representative Barrett, I would ask that this would be your last question.
It is, Madam Chair Lady. Would it surprise you if that the average is about 8 months for a VSO?
Well, I thought it was longer than that, but that's probably right.
And obviously there's a problem highlighted in that series of questions. Representative Love.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Commissioner, just wanted to briefly thank you for your assistance in helping us get a gold star marker in our district and for the plans we have to increase those. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. During COVID period, it was taking a long time for us to service the community, particularly in Memphis at the West Tennessee Cemetery. And I'm wondering, has the backlog really subsided? I know a lot of people put a lot of energy around and sending people from other places in the state to help bury loved ones, but it was really big backup in Shelby County. And I'm just wondering how are we doing there? Have we resolved some of those issues? Or are we still having problems?
So Memphis State Veteran Cemetery is the third highest volume in the nation. So there's over 50,000 veterans in that Shelby County area. And you're correct. In fact, when I came into this job, there was a pretty significant backlog down there. What we did is we basically said, look, if there's any family having to wait more than 10 business days for to inter a veteran, I want to know about it and I want to know why. And so they immediately instituted the 10-day waiting period of the only way now we go beyond 10 days without it being brought up to our level is if the family themselves wants to wait because, members coming in from out of town or whatever. So I think I haven't heard anything lately from the Memphis area about long wait times. Everybody seems to be happy with the approach we have down there on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the rest of the state for responding to the crisis. I felt it was a crisis. People was waiting a very long time, 3-4 weeks and months, trying to get their member, buried. And so a lot of people did pitch in and help. It means a lot to us that did happen. And I'm glad to hear that we've moved beyond that. And I appreciate the 10 business days. That makes sense to me. I can see that working. So I think that was a good solution because I just got tired of the phone calls with people really in pain about it. So thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Sparks.
Commissioner Baker and Deputy Scholes, I know the tasks that y'all have are kind of difficult, some of these needs, but I just want to tell you, coming to our Veterans Court, I've personally seen y'all there. I've personally seen you shake hands with all these folks who are going through it. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to them. It means a lot to our community. So thank you for showing up. Many times it's just showing up and being there. So I just want to tell you thank you.
Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and Commissioner Baker. The East Tennessee Honor Guard just completed their 7,000th ceremony. The grant program that was put in place last year, along with another grant, the Legacy Grant, which was over, I think, $1 million. Your office was tasked with the administration of these. Have y'all, I think you were looking at a possible person, but you've just had to cover that out of existing resources. Is that correct?
That's correct. We don't really know what that's going to look like yet because we've not started receiving those invoices. We have obviously put a lot of work into how to administer the program and how internally we can do that. But right now we're just doing that with existing personnel.
And that's a large task. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I'd just like to hear quick comment on how well Parker's Crossroad is doing. Are there any problems? Or are we still doing well?
As far as we know, Representative Shaw, it's right there between on 108 and it's a rural community, and they don't have a lot of volume in terms of burials, but they stay on top of it. I know for you that travel I-40, it's a beautiful sight to go down through there in the evening when the light's on and look out there and see that cemetery. But they're doing well.
Thank you for the comment. Thank you, sir.
I don't have any other questioners on my list, so thank you for your time today. And again, I know we were, so we had to have you wait, and I do apologize for that, but we appreciate the enlightenment that you brought. And I think there's, some concern, as you heard expressed here, about our, and I know it's complicated in that the process in terms that these are county employees, but working for Veteran Services. But I know in our county we have a young man there. He's been there for at least 2 years, maybe 3. It's made a huge difference in our veterans and them being able to navigate the system. And nobody is asking for anything they don't deserve. We're just trying to get them what they are due, and sometimes that can be very difficult. So anything that we can do and whatever we need to do to focus on less turnover and I guess more stability in that program, then I think this committee would be interested in hearing about that. But with that, again, we thank you for your time and wish you a happy rest of your Monday. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Last but not least, on our list today for budget, we have the person who collects all of our dollars in the state, Commissioner Gargano, if you would come forward. And Commissioner, in the interest of time, we'll just ask you to proceed with your presentation, and then we'll see what questions the members may have for you.
Thank you, Chair Lady Hazelwood and committee members. I'm David Giordano, Commissioner of Revenue. As always, really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and present our budget requests for the upcoming fiscal year. Briefly on if I can introduce my staff, on my far left is Amanda McGraw, our Chief Financial Officer. On my immediate left is Christine Lapps, our Deputy Commissioner, and on my right is Courtney Swim, our Chief of Staff. Madam Chair, I'll jump right in. Our only cost increase for FY25 is a one-time request for $150,000 for a call center upgrade. And what we need to do is the vendor that supplies our phone system has notified us that they no longer support the system we currently have. It's outdated. They're not going to support it. It needs to be replaced. And by phone system, of course, we don't, of course, use handsets anymore. We're really talking about the software that runs on our computers that operates our phone center. And these would be all of our customer service representatives, both in taxpayer services and in vehicle services, as well as our collections agents and our collections services call center. So the $150,000 request would be to upgrade that phone system. There are some enhanced capabilities that will come with that are very welcome to us. We don't currently have a predictive dialer, and that will be part of the new system, as well as integration with our current customer service system and certain spam blocking capabilities that we don't currently have. I have just briefly a slide.
We would all like those, please.
I'm sorry.
Would you include us on the spam blocking?
Yeah, be happy to do that. Just a couple real quick data points. On the left, our taxpayer services division call center alone takes over around 600,000 calls. Their answer rate is in the mid to upper 90s, which we're very proud of. But this system will make it easier for them to do that by, as I said, integrating with our current system. And when a call is initiated, when they receive a call, say it's from a business, that business's account will pop up automatically in front of the customer service representative to allow them to have the information that they need and just make the whole process quicker and more efficient, both for our employee, but more importantly for the caller. On the collection services side, this one perhaps requires a little more explanation. The blue bars are the number of cases given to our agents to work. The orange line are the number of calls that they're able to complete in terms of actually connecting with the person who they need to speak with. And you can see a fairly dramatic drop over the last couple of years in their ability to connect and complete a call with the person who they need to talk with. There's a couple of reasons for that. Part of that is the spam issue, and that's affecting us really in two ways. Our outgoing calls are showing up as spam, and we are getting incoming calls that are spam. And so the new phone system will address both of those issues. Also, I mentioned the predictive dialer. Currently, the agent has to initiate the call himself or herself. With the predictive dialer, that'll all happen behind the scenes. The system will be initiating the calls, and it will only be connected to a representative once there's a connection made. So that will be much more efficient. They can spend their time actually talking to folks that we have been able to connect with on the line rather than initiating those calls. So we're looking forward to those upgrades, and those are some of the reasons for that request. For the current FY24 year, there's a supplemental amount, the $1.2 billion that has been discussed and you're familiar with, that would be to fund House Bill 1893. I know that's not before the committee yet, but that is the amount associated with that bill. And then finally, we have one FY25 recurring reduction in our requested budget. The state, as I understand, is working to get off of the mainframe. The Department of Revenue has gotten off of the mainframe, and this $412,000 savings is a result of that. It's reflected in that in getting off the mainframe. With that, Chair Lady Hazelwood, those are my prepared comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And I'm sure that we have some, beginning with Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Lady and Commissioners. Great to see you today, and appreciate everything you guys are doing for us. Back in 2022, we passed a bill that would provide a sales tax exemption for infrastructure components related to broadband. Can you kind of give us an overview of how that works? How do they apply for the exemption? And are you aware of anybody that's been denied their exemption on that? And for the record, for those of you that don't know, it actually sunsets in 2025. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, sir. As you mentioned, it's a 3-year sales tax exemption for broadband infrastructure, basically. So it would be telecom, internet, other providers such as that to build out high-speed broadband access. And they would apply to us, and we would grant them a certificate. That they would then use to supply to their vendor to purchase that equipment tax exempt. I'm not aware of any one being denied, but I will say I didn't specifically ask that question. I can go back and do that and get with you if there's more information. I'm not personally aware of denials. I think the program's going well. We have some figures on the amount of exemptions that we're aware of so far. We have put on our return a separate line for that to be reported to try to track that as best we can. Now, not every person uses every line that we put on the return exactly the way we want it to. So I can't say that's data is all of the exemption. I can say it's what has been reported to us as exempt purchases. And as you said, that runs through, I think, FY25.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Good afternoon. Last year, Public Chapter 423 tasked the Department of Revenue and the Department of Agriculture with regulating the sale and distribution of hemp-derived cannabinoid products. To offset costs associated with this regulation, an additional 6% sales tax is applied to these products, which with proceeds split evenly between the Department of Revenue and the Department of Agriculture. Here's the question. Provide an overview of the department's regulation of this product since enactment of Public Chapter 423.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. So sort of two parts. The tax to fund the regulation went into effect July 1 of last year, I believe. And we have some numbers. It's actually, Courtney, can you pull those numbers? Can you give those real quick?
Yep. Courtney Swim, Chief of Staff. So the monthly total for collections so far has run around $1 million per month. as time has gone on, the monthly totals have gone on the increase, but we are looking at about $1 million per month to date.
So that was sort of step one, is start collecting the tax. Then step two is the regulatory function, as you mentioned, is part Department of Revenue and part Department of Agriculture. Those provisions, as I understand, they really go into effect beginning this July. We have been gearing up to do those inspections, the inspections that we would do at the Department of Revenue. We've had ongoing conversations with the Department of Agriculture so that we're all prepared when that goes into effect.
Follow. Thank you. Thank you for that. It's pretty strong, $1 million a month. Will any of the unused funds for the 6% additional sales tax revert to the general fund at the close of the fiscal year, or will it all be absorbed by administration costs? How will that work?
I'd like to, if I could, ask Amanda to weigh in on that.
Amanda McGraw, Chief Financial Officer. We're still working through that with budget and what that looks like. They did fund 6 positions, I believe, at the start of that before funds started coming in. And so now we've got to go through our talks with budget on exactly how the remaining of those funds are going to end up working for the department's budget.
All right, thank you. Back on the broadband issue, I think it's important to note that hopefully, based on some TASER studies and some other things, we actually are making a dent in our broadband accessibility across the state. And I think it was, a wise decision on the part of this body and the legislature to, rather than collect tax and take a percentage of the dollars that were coming in from these grants, putting it back into our coffers, we actually put it back into broadband to hopefully even further speed the process, so that someday soon we maybe say that almost everybody in Tennessee who wants broadband will have access to it. So again, I know we have talked at length in other settings about the $1.2 billion elephant in the room. So we have run out of time and run out of questions. And with that, we'll say thank you for your time today. And we appreciate your, again, your willingness to hang around and wait for us to get to you on our calendar. And thank you for your part in making sure that we're collecting what is due for the state, so that we can continue to provide the services for the Tennesseans that they want and need for the state to provide for them. So thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
With that, members, we have no further business, and we will back in session and now stand adjourned.